What do you mean you're pregnant, Mom? I will try to be as direct as possible. I, 20, always had a complicated relationship with my mother. Throughout my childhood, she always had problems with addiction. Basically, what I remember from my childhood with her is living with her until things got so bad that our family had to step in, moving in with them, my mom getting better, then moving back in with her only for her to get worse and the cycle to start all over again. However, since I was 13 I have lived with my uncles. They are incredible and they have always been the parents I needed, but since then my mother has not asked me to stay with her again. My uncles always explained that she had a disease and her leaving me with them was proof of her love for me. You can imagine that my relationship with her has always been complicated, but I've always tried to understand that this is something that is out of her control. In the last months, she's been on a good streak again, stopping all that poop. She's moved in with a new boyfriend and he seems to be someone that wants to help her out. We don't see each other much but I try to call her at least every 15 days, and my parents always try to report to me about her improvements. However, last week, after a long time, she was the one that called me and asked me to go out. I tried not to get too excited because I already know what she's like, but at the same time, I was happy. When we met, she explained how her boyfriend has helped her to cut 100% contact with anyone who influences her to go back to addiction, and how she wants to be a better person. She even started therapy and went to rehab for a while. I said I was very happy and asked what finally motivated her to make that decision. And then she told me that he helped her but that the big motivator that gave her strength is that they decided to start a family and that she wanted to meet me in person to let me know that she is pregnant. She said she needed to be better. To be present, and that is what is helping her focus on recovery. It hurt me, you know? That they were worth it, but I wasn't. I decided to leave before our lunch was even over and ignored all forms of contact from her thereafter. As people say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. However, yesterday her boyfriend called me. I answered because I didn't have his number saved, and he started yelling at me. He said I was an a-hole, that for him I would never have contact with his family, because apparently no one knows where my mom is, and what hindered her improvement was my attitude. My grandparents are also angry with me and said that I am very irresponsible and that I didn't have emotional responsibility with someone very vulnerable. My parents said I didn't do anything wrong but I have my doubts. Am I the a-hole? I leave itemized tips at restaurants to make up for my wife's embarrassing behavior. My wife and I dine out every once in a while, but not too often because of my wife's annoying habit, inherited from her family. She always complains, sends food back whenever she feels like it, even if it's absolutely perfect, and makes needless requests and substitutions, even though she doesn't have allergies or sensitivities. She is also extremely loud when making these complaints to the servers and will try her best to shame the server in this way in front of the whole restaurant. It can easily take 25 minutes for her just to order her own food, and sometimes I've already finished my meal by the time she gets her food because she sends it back, asks for modifications, complains that it's too spicy even though it was stated on the menu that the dish is extra spicy. Yes, she has done this exact thing, by the way. I know restaurant staff don't appreciate it. I've tried talking to her about this but she doesn't see an issue with it. Anyway, we make decent money and we use our combined funds on dates and dinners together. I recently started writing what my wife does on the receipt and then calculating a tip, in addition to the normal gratuity to compensate. So, to a receipt I might add, complained about not having a certain beverage, plus $5. Asked literally 10 questions about a single menu item, plus $5. Asked for new drink because too much ice, then complained that the next drink didn't have enough ice, plus $5. Sent meal back, even though it was exactly what she ordered, plus $5. She didn't notice me doing it the first 2 or 3 times, but last night she noticed I was spending a lot of time writing a tip amount and asked why. I showed her what I wrote. She's been mad at me since, saying I'm embarrassing her to the staff. I told her she's embarrassing us both. My boyfriend cheated on me, so I convinced him to get matching tattoos. I left the parlor after he got it first. This happened 5 years ago when I was 19. He was 22 and the second boyfriend I've ever had. I was head over heels in love with him. But looking back, he was just a good pickup artist and knew how to push my buttons. Especially considering he was older and a lot more experienced than me. We have been together for almost a year when a random girl from our university DM'd me one day. You don't know me, and I am sorry to tell you this, but I've been sleeping with your boyfriend for 5 months now. He always told me he was single, but I recently got suspicious and went through his phone. I'm paraphrasing, but you get the point. I was utterly heartbroken and felt like such an idiot. Now it all made sense why he was super busy half the time and could not see me. What I was more upset about was the fact that he blatantly lied to me throughout the relationship, swearing that he was monogamous and expected the same for me. And I was. After my emotions had more or less settled after a couple of days, I invited that girl, let's call her Caitlin, to a coffee shop. She agreed to meet and tell me everything she knows. Long story short, Caitlin saw on his phone that he was dirty texting many girls, and from quickly scrolling through most of the chats, it was clear that he was screwing at least 4, me included. Caitlin said that she and the other 2 girls were just friends with benefits, but he did not mention at least to her that he has a girlfriend and he is cheating. Caitlin did not care about the other girls, they were treated the same way, they were just friends with benefits. But I was in a serious relationship with him and had no idea what was happening. After discovering this, I got furious. I felt so played and manipulated. The grown-up thing would have been to confront him, tell him he's a jerk, and just leave. But I was 19 and could not just leave it like that. I wanted to mess with his mind, too. I'm not the one who came up with a matching tattoo idea. It was my best friend. After I shared this story and told her, I was pissed off and wanted revenge. He already had plenty of tattoos, so getting another one would not be too crazy. So, I thought I might actually pull this off. The next time I saw my boyfriend, I pretended nothing had happened and acted as if I was in love with him even more. I started dropping seeds in his mind, mentioning that I was thinking about getting my first tattoo, maybe even his name, etc., which he loved, by the way. His ego was getting more than he could handle. Long story short, in about 2 weeks, we went to a tattoo parlor. My best friend secretly waited nearby in her car, and I told her to pick me up when she saw me step outside the shop. My plan was this. Go there, act a bit scared, and do an excellent old switcheroo. Play with his ego to put him on the spot. I framed it something along the lines of, I really want to do it, but I'm a scared little girl. Oh, my gosh, we're actually doing this. Is it going to hurt? I need a big, strong man to show me first, etc. And guess what? It worked like a charm. Did not take too long for him to go first and get my name tattooed on the side of his ribs with a big, robust, cool guy smirk on his face. As soon as the tattoo was finished, I just casually left the parlor, saying, I know you've been cheating on me. Dumb. He was about to run after me, but the tattoo artist stopped him because he needed to pay. The timing was just perfect. My friend parks in front of the shop. I jump in the car, and as we leave, my boyfriend runs out and sees us driving off with my middle finger in the car window. I blocked him. Gave him zero closure. Ignored all of his attempts to reach out. Was this too ruthless? Maybe childish? He probably got the tattoo covered with something else as soon as possible, but just knowing that I made him do that made me feel warm and fuzzy. My liquid kid swallowing sister ruined my life, and when I tried to get revenge, she ruined her own as well. When I was 7 years old, my dad cheated on my mother with my stepmom, Karen. After her divorce, my mom moved away and got married again. I was always under the impression that my mother abandoned me, and that's what my dad told me too. Karen had a daughter at that time who was 5, Mia. Mia and I were kinda close growing up. But when we both hit puberty, our personality was different. Mia was the typical girly girl. She developed beautifully. She was basically like Cassie from Euphoria. She would get all the attention. Even my relatives preferred her more than me. I was basically a nerd. I was interested in sports, but I was told that I do not look bad and I am very attractive and pretty in my own way. But I was overshadowed by Mia. My dad was someone who was an opportunist. Whenever he would see an opportunity for him to shine, he would take it, even if it meant sidelining his own daughter. He saw that Mia got more attention than me, so he invested everything on her. I was kinda jealous, but I wasn't really that bothered because I believed if I did something good I would be appreciated. So, I studied hard and got into a prestigious university. That was the only time my father threw a party for me because I was the first in the family to do it. But Mia was jealous of it. So, anyways, during my last year of high school I started dating Tim, 30. He proposed to me when we were sophomores in college, but we decided to wait till our graduation. So one day during our semester break, I went to his home and I saw him effing Mia. I was shocked to say the least. I remember I was crying and screaming at him. I could never forget the smirk on Mia's face. That's when I knew Mia was a B word. So, my dad and stepmom knew about it, and guess what? My dad told me to forgive them. His logic: Tim fell out of love with me, so he fell in love with your sister. You should give them your blessing instead of being petty. I shouted back. Of course you will say that because you cheated on mom. My dad and I had a screaming match. He told me he would disown me if I do not accept them and come to their wedding. I remember that I stormed off and I cried for days. That's the moment I realized I was alone. My dad didn't care if I was dead or alive. I started therapy after a friend of mine pushed me to it. It did help a bit, but in my mind I wanted some revenge. I wanted to be petty and make her regret it. I started thinking about what I could do. My initial plan was to wear white on her wedding day. But then I ran into Mia's ex, Jay. Jay and Mia have been one of those couples who are on again off again. Mia exploited Jay a lot. The last time they broke up was when Jay caught Mia flirting with one of his friends. But there was a lot of history. So, when Jay learned about Mia and Tim, he was a little angry. He kept saying he wishes he could just take revenge on all the times Mia has done him wrong. So, I had another plan. I asked him to be my +1 at her wedding. I know Mia still has feelings for Jay. It would piss her off, but we agreed that after that we would part ways. So when the wedding came, I was not in the wedding party. My dad was cordial with me because I wasn't creating trouble. So I went to her wedding with Jay and I was wearing a bright red dress because I read that red means you slept with the groom. It was also over the top. I might have made some heads turn. When Mia saw me with Jay, her face turned pale. I was purposely being very touchy with Jay, like whispering in his ears, touching his shoulder, dancing with him very closely. I swear Mia was just as red as my dress. I was also asked to give a speech. I kept it short. Thank God I do not have more sisters, otherwise Tim would have swapped Mia with one of them. You know he has a fetish of effing his fiance's sisters behind her back. Me and Jay were asked to leave. The next day I was bombarded with messages and phone calls. I didn't pick any of them. As for Jay, he stuck to our deal and I never saw him again. After the wedding incident, I decided I should find my mom because something in me was telling me that she didn't abandon me. It wasn't hard to find her. I found her on Facebook and we started chatting. She is married and has 2 boys, my half-brothers. I got the real story from her. She didn't abandon me. My father won the custody case. He used my mom's past substance abuse to take away her visitation rights too. We reconciled and for the first time in my life I felt welcomed. I also met my stepfather and my 2 brothers. They are amazing people. Since then, I would regularly meet them. 2 years after the wedding incident, I met a guy, Andy. We met during an alumni program in our college. He also went to our college, but he was 5 years my senior. We had a lot in common. He was kind, sweet and very mature. He knows about my past and has been really supportive. He was better than Tim in every other way. He was charming and had a really higher position in his job. After 2 years my sister contacted me out of the blue and told me she was pregnant and she now wants to bury the hatchets. I was very reluctant. I was afraid that she would try to steal Andy away from me as well. But Andy reassured me he is not that weak. Honestly, I do wanted to meet Dad again. So, I gave it a shot anyways. I went on dinner with Andy, and to my surprise Tim recognized him. It was later revealed to me that Andy was basically Tim's boss. This is the fact I didn't know. My dad and stepmom brought me to a corner and said that my relationship with Andy is unacceptable because I'm trying to hurt my sister by dating Tim's boss. I told them to F off. My love life is none of their business. The dinner went sour. After that I got a drunken call from Tim that he is very unhappy with my sister and that he actually wants to escape. He never knew what he lost until he saw me with Andy. I ignored him totally. Then the phone's calls didn't stop. First it was my dad telling me that me dating Andy is causing tension between my sister and Tim. I told him their marital life is none of my business. I got call from my stepsister who asked if she could come to my house and talk. I told her after the dinner party, I want nothing to do with any of them. That TCH didn't listen. Instead she went to Andy's office to convince him to talk to me. Of course Tim saw this and accused her of trying to seduce Andy like he seduced him. Long story short, Andy had to fire Tim for his misbehave. This caused even more tension. Tim became verbally abusive towards Mia and said his life was ruined because of her. They separated. Tim is trying to figure out how can he handle the divorce proceedings. After the Tim and Mia drama, my dad suddenly showed up in my apartment. He was bawling his eyes out that he caught Karen sleeping with his male cousin. He was devastated. So, I told him what he said to me when Tim cheated on me. Karen fell out of love with you so she fell in love with your cousin. You should give them your blessing instead of being petty. My dad was confused. I further told him, well, you taught me this, remember? When I was sad about Tim cheating on me with Mia, you told me to forgive them. My father's face was rotten to say the least. Now I have two family members who are going through divorce. Tim and Mia tried to reconcile but eventually they settled for divorce. My dad did apologize to me for what he did to me and mom. I told him that he deserved what's coming for him and that I have no feeling left for him. Not even pity. If the time ever comes I might forgive him but I don't want him anymore. He will not be walking me down the aisle. Andy and I are recently engaged. We are having a small ceremony with just close friends and family. I was only planning for a petty revenge but karma got them better. Have you ever had a sugar daddy? I got a message from a man asking me to be a sugar baby. Immediately I tell him that I have no money and have no intention of sending him any money and am not interested in being scammed. Of course he launches into a grandiose speech about how he'd never scam me or ever ask me for money. That he'll be paying me, so there's no need for me to be worried. Apprehensively, I agree to keep talking to him. We exchange phone numbers and begin texting back and forth. A few days go by and we're chatting regularly. I talk to him about work, his day, he asks me about my day. Things largely seem benign. At this point I'm assuming I've met a lonely old man who is looking for some attention. We never talked in any romantic capacity and he seemed to take a genuine interest in my life. Fast forward to a few days later, he texts me and tells me he's going to pay off my credit card debt, which we had previously talked about. I ask him how he intends to do so, and he becomes insistent on logging into my credit card account and adding his bank account information as the form of payment. Initially, I was incredibly reluctant. Rule 1 of basic cybersecurity would dictate that anyone asking for my personal information should not be given said information. However, there I sat weighing the risks and rewards. A young college student with a sizable amount of debt from living expenses and a man seemingly willing to pay it all off. So, I run the risk. I give him the login information and sit anxiously as I ponder all of the ways this man could ruin my life. Then, the pending payment was posted and I receive email confirmation. Immediately, I change my password and thank him profusely. After a day or two, the payment clears and my card is paid off. The euphoria I felt in that moment is unmatched. We continue talking back and forth for about 2 weeks, cut to last night at about 1 a.m. I am texting him about his weekend and he asks me to run an errand for him. This is where the feeling in my gut that something was wrong started. Then he starts telling me that he needs gift cards for crypto trading, that I need to get the cards for him because I'm the only one he can trust. That once I purchase the cards with my credit line, he would pay it all back just as he did before. Naturally, I begin to ask questions. Why do I specifically need to purchase the cards? Why can't he purchase them for himself? How many does he need? Quickly, his patience runs thin. He begins pressuring me to purchase the cards and telling me I owe him for paying off my card. Finally, I tell him outright no. That I'm uncomfortable and that he had promised I would never have to pay any fees or give him any money. Then, he got very angry. Either he's scamming or laundering money. Regardless, I didn't want to be involved. The man begins to ask for his money back, saying that if I don't pay him back in 24 hours he'll make me regret my life. I ask him how he wants to receive payment and he provides an email I do not recognize. It was then that I realized I messed up. I start panicking and shaking. At first, I considered just sending the money and having it all over with. I was so embarrassed about the debt and terrified of my parents finding out. Ultimately, I knew I didn't have the money. In fact, I never had the money at all. I wasn't given the money to pay the card. He added the payment to the account himself. So, I deleted every social media I had and changed every password to everything I own. I blocked his phone number and began thinking of any information he really had on me and what he could do with it. Unfortunately, this man was persistent. I began receiving texts from the email, telling me I'm not gonna be smart and run away with his money. I was so terrified I began pretending that I was my own parent and that I was confused as to why he was looking to contact my child. For some reason, he bought this. We interact briefly and he tells me that I need to talk to my child and get him his money in 24 hours or he'll be opening an FBI case. I then reach a realization. I need to actually tell my parents. So, I text them at the early hour of 3 a.m. telling them I messed up badly. We call and I tell everything. About the debt and the man and the threats.
Why do you no longer talk to your parents? When I was 17 years old I found out my parents were actually my grandparents. Apparently my mom had me when she was 13 because she was frequently having intimacy with her stepbrother, who at the time was 18. When my grandparents found out, they were deeply disturbed and upset. At first, they wanted my mom to give me up for adoption and put my dad in jail. But she worked up a deal with my grandparents. She was going to give birth to me, leave me with them, and leave the state with my father. So, that is exactly what she did. When I was about 12 years old, she and my dad came back to see me. My grandparents told me she and my dad were my second cousins who were visiting from Maryland. I believed them and spent the best 2 weeks of my life with my parents. I built a great bond with my father in those 2 weeks, and every year during the summer since I was 12, he's visited me. Until my 17th birthday. My parents came to visit us again, but this time to surprise me with an awesome gift for my 17th birthday. They gave me a German Shepherd. He was the cutest dog I've ever seen. After the dog, my mom gave me a card. I opened it and it revealed that the people who I thought were parents were actually my grandparents, and the people who I thought were my second cousins were my actual real parents. My entire life has been a lie. I was so upset when they told me this. I took my new dog, ran into my room, and locked myself in there for 2 days. Eventually I came out of my room to tell my grandparents that I was no longer going to be living with them and that I would like to never speak to them or my real parents again. It has been 5 years and I've forgiven my grandparents. I have not spoken to my real parents since that incident. My grandpa told me that they got married and had 3 more kids.
I put my bullied foster daughter in an expensive private school, but my know-it-all sister called me greedy and wants me to pay off her debts. She is telling me I need to give up my daughter or I will be cut off from the family. I pay about $3,000 a month, a lot I know, for a private school for my sweet foster daughter who was getting beat up and bullied daily in her private school. She was being bullied so badly that she had to be taken to the hospital and had surgeries for internal bleeding and broken bones. Even if she is not my biological child, I never want to see her suffering like that ever again, no matter how much it costs, which is why I put her in the new school. My family was supportive at first, bringing her presents and sweets after her injuries, and she got along well with my sister's 3 kids. But I realized that whenever my sister brings her kids around to visit, she will make comments about how expensive my foster daughter's school is and tell me I need to learn how to manage my money better, even sending me YouTube videos breaking down how to balance a budget. I think she's just jealous, and probably hurting for money. Ever since my sister's husband recently died from brain cancer, my sister has been very depressed and snapping at everyone, which is understandable. She has even needed to pick up another job to help cover the hospital bills from her husband's treatment. They must be really struggling because when her kids were visiting, one of the older ones steals the school supplies that my foster daughter gets from her private school, too. I know it is not the kid's fault, so I wasn't mad, but I did tell my sister that it needs to stop. When I told her about this, she was furious at me and said she couldn't believe I wasn't putting family first and getting mad over something so small. She said that spending thousands of dollars every month on a child that wasn't mine was a waste of money and selfish. My sister has hundreds of thousands of dollars in cancer treatment debt, and she thinks that I should stop paying for my foster daughter's private school and help her get out of trouble instead. My sister says that she loves my foster daughter but that my real family is more important, and that my foster daughter's real family should be the ones taking care of her. That was the last straw, and I told her that my foster daughter is my real family, and I left to cool off. I received an email the next day from my sister's lawyer who said that if I continue paying for private school for my foster daughter that I will be written out of our family's $10 million inheritance. The lawyer also said that they contacted my foster daughter's biological mother and that they made a motion to have her taken back in by her real family. I cut off contact with my sister and I am fighting for custody for my foster daughter, who is all the family I need.
You have to duck the last thing you googled. What is it? Predator the movie. This is going to be difficult and bloody. Norway? All of it. How to pit a cherry. Apparently I will be pioneering a fascinating new method. The broad concept of weather. Guess I'll be frickin' sunny with 0% chance of rain.
My daughter's bratty classmate is bullying my daughter and the teachers are sympathizing with her because she is less fortunate. So my daughter stood up and made me proud. My daughter has a close-knit group of 5 best friends with whom she does everything together. At her school, students have to sit in the same seat for every single lesson, and my daughter and her best friends all sit together at one table. There is another little girl in my daughter's class called Winnie. Once, Winnie came to sit at my daughter's table when one of her friends was off sick. That day, Winnie constantly knocked my daughter's books and pens off the table by accident, and borrowed her stationery only to snap one of her rubbers, stain her highlighter with black ink, and was even found with my daughter's pens in her pocket. One morning Winnie came to school crying nonstop. The teacher was very sympathetic and asked if there was anything she could do to help. Winnie said she wanted my daughter removed from her seat so she could have it, and the teacher agreed. The only empty seats left were all the way in the back corner of the classroom opposite her friends, and the only students sitting there were a girl who was known to be a delinquent and 2 older boys who had been held back. The teacher refused to give my daughter a real explanation for why she had to move seats, instead saying some generic stuff about being kind to those less fortunate. My daughter cried for a week straight. In our country, the school year ends in December, so that's over 7 months of being isolated from her closest friends. She's also starting high school next year and will be attending a private school, while her friends are going to a public school, so this is the last time she can hang out with them every day. A few days ago, I was called into school because my daughter had gotten into an argument with Winnie. Winnie had confided in my daughter's friends about how she had gone into foster care after her parents overdosed. Winnie was always a loner at school and wanted some girls to sit with during this time, and the teacher sympathized with her so she agreed. The only reason my daughter Had to move was because there wasn't enough space for 7 girls and my daughter was simply the one Winnie liked the least, and she admitted to lying to the teacher about being uncomfortable around my daughter to get her moved. When my daughter found this out, she told Winnie she didn't understand why she had to pay the price just because Winnie's parents were a bunch of insane criminals who didn't want her anymore. I know Winnie's had a hard time, but so has my daughter. Her older brother passed away only months ago. I told the teachers that Winnie isn't the only child going through a tough time and I didn't understand why my daughter had to be punished for another girl's struggles as if she wasn't suffering herself. The teachers wanted me to make my daughter apologize for her remarks, and I said it was their fault for punishing her and forcing her to sit with the problem kids despite doing nothing wrong, and they were downplaying my daughter's grief and trauma to cater to a brat.
I enforced a boundary with my girlfriend and she broke up with me. My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year now. She is very spoiled and is used to getting what she wants, but I don't give in to her or let her manipulate me. I live about 3 hours away for work, and I come home on the weekends. Her parents always tell me I'm welcome to stay at their place with her on weekends that I come home, but I never want them to feel taken advantage of, so this is something I'm not comfortable with. I've made it clear that I'll only stay the night one night out of the weekend, not both. I'll stay with my own parents the other night. She's sick right now, and I stayed the night Friday night. She was feeling pretty miserable yesterday and started giving me a hard time about staying Saturday night too because she wanted cuddles and company. I upheld my boundary and told her I would not do it. She got really upset and brought up how her parents are fine with it and wouldn't feel taken advantage of. Well, after she wouldn't stop pestering me, I admit in a moment of anger I gave in to her, took my jacket off and slammed it down on the dining room table. Not half a second later she says something like, "Oh no, absolutely not, I changed my mind." She then asked me to leave because she said I shouldn't get that mad at the thought of staying with my sick girlfriend. I told her it doesn't matter, I already decided to stay, and she said I don't care, I changed my mind and I am asking you to leave. I told her I wasn't going to leave after she just pestered me for 10 minutes until I finally gave in. I was pretty shocked at what she said next, but she told me then, "I'm breaking up with you right now. I don't need to feel this way." She was being very blunt and she just kept saying, "Go now. Just get your things and go." Among other things. She wasn't yelling, just saying things like I'm young and beautiful and I don't need some guy to make me feel this way, and this isn't the first time you've made me feel like shit. I was thinking to myself whatever, but then something snapped in me to slap the ever-living poop out of her. I stomped out the house furiously, went into the car, and took a deep breath of relief. Did I dodge a bullet? I stopped using pet cameras for good. My girlfriend recently caught me eating out my neighbor and moved out 3 weeks ago. Note it's just me and my cat, Rook. They were really close and now that she's gone, I can tell he's a bit lonely. Especially when I'm at work. I came home a few times to have my curtains ripped up, or all the toilet paper in shreds. The last straw was when I came home after working late to find he had clawed a hole the size of a dinner plate into the side of the sofa. I decided I had to do something. I tried different toys, even catnip, but nothing worked. One night while browsing Amazon, I saw a pet camera. It's a tiny camera that records your pet on a live feed so you can monitor their behavior while you're away. It even has an audio function so you can talk to them. Sounded silly, but hey, I love my furry dude, so I bought it. I got overnight shipping and installed it immediately. I decided to set it up in my bedroom, as that was where Rook dwelled most. My first day at work I think I checked that camera 30 times. When I spoke into the microphone, Rook seemed to be happier, and I noticed there was no destruction around the house either. By day 4 I figured I'd solved the problem with Rook. That leads me to right now. About 30 minutes ago I climbed in bed with Rook, ready to close my eyes, when my phone buzzed. A notification from the pet cam. I almost ignored it, sure I'd just triggered the thing. But I opened it anyway. What I saw made my grip tighten on the phone. Instead of a video of myself in bed I saw a man, tall, gangly, with pale skin, and large eyes. He was moving into my room with exaggerated steps, like a sneaking cartoon character. He got right up to the lens, so close I could almost smell his rotten breath, and he smiled. I immediately paused the video, terrified. I looked at the spot where the man should have been standing, but there was no one there. I went onto Amazon and found the pet cam, and read the reviews, hoping for some weird glitch. It had to be a joke, right? The first dozen reviews were pretty standard, but it was the last that caused me to bolt upright. The customer complained that the camera was on a time delay, sometimes as much as 15 minutes. I went back to the video and pressed play with shaky fingers. I watched in horror as the man slithered under my bed, giving the camera a wink before disappearing in the darkness. Then I saw myself enter the room and climb in bed before the video ended. Now I'm sitting in my bed, knowing he's under it. I could call the police, but I doubt I'd have time. So please, do yourselves a favor and read the reviews. My son will inherit, his affair baby will receive nothing. My name is Amelie, 26, and I have a 5-year-old son. My ex-husband, 29, cheated on me with his coworker, Bethany, 28. I was 2 months pregnant with our second child when I found out Bethany was going to have his child. I miscarried. My ex left the house to be with her. It's been 2 years since it was born. My mother-in-law has been supportive of me and has had nothing to do with my ex or his mistress and their child. Up until a few months ago. I adore my in-laws and we're extremely close. My mother-in-law and parents are the best of friends. She loves me and her grandson more than anything. This infuriates my ex-husband's affair partner. My in-laws cut contact with him straight away. Bethany was jealous that her child would never know the love of grandparents. At least her son has a father. This brings us to the problem. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law has been very ill for a while and so she's updated her will. My ex-husband was an only child, so he would get everything. But now, my son will inherit her house, villa and money. I will receive a large portion of her money and all of her belongings. Until my son turns 18, it will be in my trust. If I pass before that, my parents will take care of it. They do not know this. The thing is, once they caught wind of her being ill, my ex-husband begged for forgiveness. The mistress started being nice towards her, she started fights and called her horrible names before, and forced her to be around his baby. My mother-in-law is bedbound, but she says she wants to leave with a bang, so she'll endure this. I haven't encouraged her to do anything, and this is her choice alone. They want her money, and her son thinks he is still included in the will. He also thinks his child will now be acknowledged by his grandmother and will also receive money. Now, my mother-in-law hasn't actually said she's forgiven them. She despises her son and his mistress for tearing apart our family. She wants to reward those who deserve it, and get revenge in one go. The mistress keeps on hinting on how her child will grow up and attend a great college, etc. money-involved things, whenever she's around my mother-in-law. Actually, mother-in-law's niece, my cousin by marriage, has overheard her on the phone discussing what wallpaper she wants in the dining room when she moves in and how my mother-in-law has no taste whatsoever. She also mentioned how she'll finally be able to take down pictures of my son when my ex owns the house. Too bad for her, it will belong to my son. No changes will be made until my son becomes 18. It's his grandmother's home and he should be allowed to cherish it in the way she's decorated it. I'm not really allowed to tell anyone, and though this revenge will be satisfying, I'll have to lose my mother-in-law. It's kind of a win-lose situation and I dread the day when she'll take her last breath. She means a lot to me, I love her. She wants this for her grandson, and has said that she cannot rest until she knows her son and his mistress have been punished. She wants this because her childhood was also ruined because of her father and his affair partner. She wants my son to know he was loved and will always be loved. I hope my son will always value the great women in his life. I wish he had more time with his grandmother. I refuse to let my kids grow up if iPad zombies like the rest of their generation. My dad and his new girlfriend disagree. I, 30F, have 2 kids. Arthur. When my son was a baby, my husband, 32M, and I decided we wouldn't give our children any gadgets like phones, tablets, or computers until they were at least 9 years old. I worked as a babysitter in my early 20s and many of the kids I took care of were glued to their iPads. Most of them had no social skills, refused to go out, and were absolute nightmares to be around when they didn't have a gadget with them. I don't like judging other parents, and I understand how overwhelming children can be, but I refuse to raise mine like that. My dad, 63M, is dating a significantly younger woman. Let's call her Shelley, 37F. Her sister had her 3rd child earlier this year and gave her older kids an iPad to distract them while she focused on the baby. My father and Shelley both saw this and thought that was a great idea. Since Lucy was born, my father has been trying to convince me to get Arthur an iPad. He says that this would be a great way to keep him busy while I take care of the baby, and to make parenting less of a struggle for me and my husband. The thing is, though, we are not struggling. Yes, things aren't perfect, but we're happy and healthy without iPads. Whenever I try to express that to my dad, he ignores me. I've been declining his advice all year. He finally stopped bringing it up about a month ago, and I thought it was over. Last week, he and Shelley got back from a trip abroad. I went to their place to pick up some things I'd asked them to get, and I noticed an iPad box in one of their suitcases. Shelley confirmed they got it as a Christmas gift for Arthur. When my father tried to deny that, it became clear that they planned on giving it to him behind my back. As calmly as I could, I said I didn't care who they gave that iPad to, but it wouldn't be Arthur. We ended up having a huge fight, and I told them my family wouldn't be attending the Christmas dinner my aunt is hosting unless they promised not to give Arthur the iPad. Both my father and Shelley are furious. They're calling me ungrateful and insist they're only trying to help me and my husband, and we'd see that if we weren't so stubborn. My father is also angry that I'm denying Arthur an expensive gift that many people don't have access to. My husband and I aren't budging, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel like I'm overreacting. I also don't want to spend Lucy's first Christmas without the rest of my family, and when I think about that, this feels absolutely awful. Update 1. Since my post last week, a few things have happened, including Christmas, of course. Some people in the comments suggested accepting the iPad but hiding it away until Arthur was old enough to use it. I really didn't want to do that at first, but after talking to my husband, we decided we could try to make it work. I told my father we would come to my aunt's place for Christmas and accept the iPad on the condition that he didn't let Arthur see it. Our plan was to tell him that Grandpa had gotten him a gift for when he got bigger. He had said he wanted a Hot Wheels track for Christmas a while ago, and my husband and I had bought it for him, so we offered to have my dad give it to him instead. I expected my father to agree, but instead he accused me and my husband of not trusting him and Shelley, as well as denying Arthur something he'd spent so much money on. He also dismissed our racetrack idea, stating that he had the right to decide what he got for his own grandson. I hung up on him and called my aunt to tell her we weren't coming for Christmas. She asked me about it, and I ended up explaining the entire situation to her. Well, it turns out that mine and my kids' presents was more important to her and my cousins than my father's. My aunt threatened to ban him and Shelley from her place if they gave Arthur the iPad. After a small fight in the crying fit from Shelley, and I'm not exaggerating, she blew up all over the phone. My father apologized and asked what else he could give my son for Christmas. I gave him some ideas, like toys, books, and art kits, all stuff that Arthur would like, and he ignored all of them and got him a pair of socks instead. Whatever, Arthur still liked it. My father and Shelley gave the iPad to her sister's kids, so now they have 2 iPads, and I know that because Shelley made a point of telling Arthur in front of me that her nephews got the best gift ever and that she was sorry he couldn't have the same thing. Arthur just kept playing playing with his new Lego set. He either didn't listen or didn't care. I still made sure to keep her away from him throughout the night. My dad saw that, and I think he finally realized my kid wouldn't care about the iPad. He called me yesterday and apologized more sincerely this time. All that said, I think you guys are right about him. This incident and how he has reacted has made it clear that he doesn't really respect me as a parent or care about my boundaries for my children. So I will closely monitor the time he spends with Arthur and Lucy in the future. The only reasons why I'm not completely cutting him off are because he apologized, and he is generally a good grandfather to my kids, and my son loves spending time with him. Shelly's on time out, though. I have no interest in taking my kids to his place if she's there. The only reason I didn't make a scene at what she said to my son was that I had to keep my husband from doing the same. Thank you all, and happy holidays. My racist in-laws almost unalived my dog and trashed my house. When I kicked them out, my fiancée took their side and now I want to break up with her. My fiancée Meg and I have been together for 5 years and I thought she was the love of my life, until this happened. We are going to be married soon, so we're in the process of moving her in with me since my home is quite large compared to hers. Because of this, I also agreed to host her family from out of town for Thanksgiving. I'm going to be blunt, I do not like Meg's family. They are all extremely conservative, conspiracy theorist, really racist, a woman's place is in the kitchen types. Meg is very different from them but is close with them. She believes that she can't cut ties with them because they're still family and blood is thicker than water. She hasn't seen them in a year, so I agreed that they could stay at my place for the holiday, because I can usually tolerate them enough. I agreed to Wednesday morning. Meg's parents arrive, and things are fine. That is, until Meg's sister arrived. You see, I have a dog named Lucy. She's my dog, not Meg's. I had her for years before Meg was around, and Meg is not a big fan of dogs, although she likes Lucy. I was in the bathroom when the sister pulled into the driveway. Meg's mom called to me and said, "I'm going to let Lucy out front to say hi to Meg's sister," to which I explicitly said no, don't do that. She needs to be on a leash and I should handle her. Give me a minute and I can come help, but leave her inside. I know she heard me because she said okay. 2 minutes later, Meg came screaming saying that her mom let Lucy outside and she ran away down the street. I ran out of the house and got in my car to drive after her, but I could never find her. I drove all around my neighborhood and adjacent neighborhoods trying to find her all day, but I just couldn't. She had my number on her collar, but I was terrified she was gone or got hit by a car or something. Meg drove around in her car some throughout the day too, but her parents and sister did nothing. They just spent the day partying at my house and making a mess. I told them to clean up, but I just woke up to a dirty house and broken things everywhere. I couldn't be bothered with that because Lucy was still missing. I resumed the search in the morning on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. Later that afternoon, I got a call in the afternoon that someone found Lucy. I went and got her and she was a mess. She had several bite marks and was bleeding in several places. I think she got in a fight with a wild animal. I took her to the ER immediately and they patched her up. Luckily, she will pull through, but that process took a long time, so I didn't get home until Thursday night. I was exhausted and basically locked myself in my room with Lucy to watch her. I was really pissed at Meg's family, and worst of all, she was taking their side. I never noticed this until today, but whenever I had an argument with her family, she always sided with them. One time, they were being racist towards my friend, calling him every slur in the book, and she told me to drop it because it wasn't a big deal. I couldn't believe I just let that go, and it was bad that them almost unaliving my dog was my last straw when it should have been that. If things weren't bad enough already, Meg's dad knocked on my door to tell me to be a man, that the dog was back, and it was just a stupid dog, so who cares? I told them all to leave right now. Meg was upset and said they didn't have anywhere to go. I said I don't care, but they can't be at my home because their level of disrespect was too much. They're horrible people and I shouldn't have agreed to house them for Thanksgiving. They wouldn't go and insults were thrown my way. They said they never liked me and I didn't deserve to marry Meg. Truthfully, I was rethinking my relationship with Meg after all this. They wouldn't leave until I threatened to call the cops. Meg left with them and texted that it was rude for offering my home and then kicking them out because they made an honest mistake. I never even got an apology for what they put my dog through. My pee-pee is too big and I hate it. My pee-pee is so large I just cannot lug it around any longer. It is so insanely huge and has caused so many problems in my life. I cannot go to airports as they think I'm sneaking something in. So every time I go, I get touched as they try to take my pee-pee off thinking it's a bomb. I cannot pleasure women as they are so horrified at the sight of my pee-pee, that they immediately run away. My mother and father disown me after seeing the length of my shaft. Not only is it extraordinarily long, it is just too thick. I cannot relieve myself as my hands are just too small to choke the chicken. My humongous pee-pee has ruined my life. I resent God for cursing me with this large chunk of meat that just drags across the ground. Doctors tell me I will never be able to get a pee-pee reduction as they would have nowhere to put the pee-pee. It would just take up far too much room. I had a girlfriend when I was a young lad. She loved me for who I was and did not care for this deformity, but one day, I took off my jeans and my pee-pee flung out, smacking her and flinging her out the window. She died 2 hours later in the hospital. She was the only woman who ever loved me. My pee-pee is just too ginormous. It has caused problems for myself and the people around me. For this reason, I will be ending it all. My pee has taken over my life. But it cannot take over a life that does not exist.
My baby's father is demanding to use my child as therapy for his grief-stricken wife who just lost her own kid. My 6-year-old daughter Katie was conceived after a drunken one-night stand with a man named Jeff. He was never involved after I told him I was pregnant and actually wanted me to terminate the pregnancy, but I decided to raise my child alone since I have enough money to raise her without child support. For the whole pregnancy and the first 4 years, Jeff was not in the picture. On my mother's recommendation, I did send him pictures and invited him to special events, but he always replied he had no interest in my daughter. 2 years ago, he reappeared and began demanding parental rights. When I didn't do what he wanted, he sued and was told no, he was not getting parental rights. He was given the offer to pay child support and then we can revisit giving him actual rights, but he has refused. He has the money, much more than me, but he refuses. I still offer to let him see my daughter in a casual manner, no child support needed, with the agreement that anything legal, medical or educational will not involve him. He pushed the boundaries and wanted to transfer Katie to a school closer to his area behind my back, and we had a fallout. After that, we didn't hear from him for almost 6 weeks before he called to meet for Christmas. After much discussion, I agreed to bring my daughter over on the condition my daughter's godparents could come. Thus we went over for Christmas dinner. I found out Jeff is married and had never told his family he had a child. It was great to be judged by a bunch of strangers. It was uncomfortable the whole time, especially because she kept calling my daughter not Katie, but Gabrielle the whole time. The wife was also very touchy, trying to pick up my daughter or parent her even when I told her not to do so. The whole time she pretty much ignored me, but Katie didn't seem nervous, so I decided to just bide my time. I hit my limit when my daughter said she needed the bathroom and Jeff's wife, "Oh Gabrielle, you need a potty? Let mommy change you." My daughter hasn't worn diapers in a while now and she's more than capable of going alone to the bathroom. I immediately told her to stay away from my daughter and that we were leaving. The woman started wailing that I was kidnapping her baby girl and tried to lunge at me. Her in-laws got in the middle and held her, consoling her and saying that we weren't leaving and for her to calm down like she was the victim. At that point I just glared at Jeff and told him he better explain or I would be calling the police. He asked me to speak in private in another room and that I could just leave my daughter with his parents. No way that would ever happen. Katie's godparents took her with them despite the wife having a full meltdown. Jeff and I spoke outside and he explained that he and his wife recently lost her daughter named Gabriel due to cancer. And as I can only imagine, it had caused some psychological issues to his wife. Apparently he had the brilliant idea that having Katie pass as their lost child would help his wife. Without telling me. And that's why he wanted visitations and parental rights. He pleaded for me to leave my daughter with him for a little bit. I asked him what was his plan when his wife heals. His response was disgusting. "Well, I'll just send Katie back with you and it will be just like before." I told him he was insane if he thought I would let him use my daughter like that. What his wife needs is therapy with a professional, not feeding her delusions. And I would not let that woman within miles from my daughter. He told me I was being cruel and didn't know the pain of losing a child. I agreed with him, but reminded Jeff that my priority is not his family, it's my child. What he and his family do to work through their grief has nothing to do with us. I also told him to call his lawyer because I am making sure he never has contact with my child.
Women, what's that one thing you do to get men's attention that nobody knows? I use it every day after doing my skincare routine, and let me tell you, this never misses. Recently my boyfriend bought me a perfume, attraction in a bottle from a brand called Cute Urges that's now jeopardizing our relationship. He bought it thinking that spraying it on me while we have our sexy, silly time would turn him on a little more because the perfume was listed to have a small increase in pheromones. If it turned him on more, he would be able to, you get the point. God, did it work? I left the bed with my legs shaking, and I dropped to the floor. However, the scientist in me wanted to conduct my own experiment. What if I wore it everywhere? That's exactly what I did. I did my skincare and put some Vaseline on my sensitive points, just a little advice for you guys, and sprayed it there so it would stick there longer and stronger. Then I was off to classes. Do you know those moments in movies where the whole class turns back and looks back at the main character? Imagine that, except it was all the guys in the class. The funniest part is they were already looking at the door before I walked in. It was almost as if they could smell me from a mile away. That's when I needed a second to figure out why this was working so well. I hid in the bathroom and looked more into the perfume's description on cuturges.com, and my boyfriend was dead wrong. It does not do a small increase in pheromones, it's a huge one. I've been toying with all these guys' actual brain chemistry without even knowing. Walking around campus was one of the most embarrassing and best moments of my life somehow. For the first time in my life, I felt like the main character. I had so many people ask me for my snap, and to be honest, a lot of the guys were pretty good looking, but there was no way in hell I was going to cheat on my boyfriend. That's what I thought until I met him. I won't give his real name, so I'll call him Paxton for all my Never Have I Ever fans. Paxton and I got to talking and he's actually a really nice guy. He owns his own startup company and pulls around 6 figures every month. I told him I had a boyfriend and wasn't interested in the dating realm, but I had no problem being friends. He told me that we weren't going to be friends. I'm supposed to be meeting him at a hotel later this weekend, so we'll see how this goes. It feels so wrong yet so right. My girlfriend revealed the ugly truth about why she cheated on me. Me and my now ex-girlfriend were together for 8 months. We had an amazing few months together and there was nothing to suggest what was going to happen next. Before I started dating her, I was trying to convince her to get out of a toxic relationship that she was stuck in because I had a thing for her. I see now that my motives could be classified as manipulative, but at the time, I just really wanted to be with her. Plus, her boyfriend was an absolute douchebag who would make horrible comments like, "Don't wear that, it makes you look fat, and wow, you really need to go to the gym." She was a pretty slender girl, so these comments didn't make sense and were outright uncalled for. They did help her develop a bit of an eating disorder, though. Eventually, he decided that he no longer wanted to be with her and she was so upset about it. I think she cried for a whole week. I tried my best to keep her grounded, but it was a lot for her to go through as they had dated for 2 years before that point. About a week after they broke up, I started talking to her and I ended up telling her, I know that it isn't the right time to tell you, but I really like you. Honestly, I was expecting a rejection, but she disagreed with me and told me that she liked me too, so we got together. It was a great couple of months. We celebrated Christmas together, went on an amazing date for Valentine's, and even met each other's parents. My mom loves her and couldn't wait to see more of her. I don't know how to break the news to her now because all it took was one day to destroy it all. The morning of August 1, 2023, I woke up as any normal day and did normal day things. The day before, I had agreed to meet my girlfriend, but unfortunately my car had broken, so public transport was my only option. The time difference was an hour and a half, so instead of meeting her at midday, I agreed to meet her at 2 o'clock. She agreed that. That sounded good because she had something she needed to do that morning anyway. If only I knew what that thing was. Turns out, while I was getting ready to leave, she had left the house to meet up with her ex-boyfriend due to how long it would be taking me to get there. Little did I know that they had been talking to each other and meeting up frequently for the best part of 3 months, and I had no idea. After she had seen her ex, I showed up at the house and we had something to eat, then went upstairs to her room. We sat on her bed watching Peaky Blinders on the Xbox with a bowl of popcorn. At about 5:30, she received a message on her Xbox from her ex saying, "Just got home, thanks for today, I love you 20." I had no words, I didn't know what to say. I had my arm around her as I read that message and sat in her bed, 2 hours away from home. I froze for a bit and then moved away from her. Her face was pale and she had that look on her face that said, "I can explain." I persistently asked to see the messages on her phone that they had been having, and she only showed them when I gave her an ultimatum, which was show me or I leave right now. I was going to leave either way, but I just wanted to know why she had done this to me. I went out of my way to ask her, and she said I basically coerced her into a relationship with how soon I confessed. I was shocked. I told her she could have rejected me or broken up with me if she wanted to be with her douchebag ex again. She mentioned that she liked having both of us around. I guess since she knew this would only end in a breakup, she was airing her dirty laundry around everywhere. I asked her what else she had to get off her chest because this was the perfect time to do it. I don't think anything could have prepared me for what she was going to do. I seriously missed the person I was before I met her. So, she took her phone back and went onto her notes app, where she opened a note with a list of all my flaws, and there were plenty. The ones I remember most were that I was bad at intimacy, could never beat her ex in a fight because I had stick arms. She even compared me to Slender Man, and said I was a fat SS because all of our dates revolved around food. I kind of just died on the spot as she read everything out loud to me. Needless to say, I dumped her on the spot, and just 2 days later, I saw she had gotten back together with her ex. Nice guys finish last.
I'm leaving my boyfriend, a sexist pig. I hate to admit that I didn't see this sooner. My boyfriend has never liked to clean or been particularly good at it. He doesn't cook either. When I was young, I figured that all men were like this. I now regret moving in with him and getting serious. I actually like cooking and cleaning, so at first I didn't mind, but I've absolutely been taken advantage of. My meals are made from scratch, mostly, and I sometimes spend 3 to 4 hours in the kitchen prepping and cooking. My boyfriend never has to make his own plate. I bring it to him at the table, along with his condiments and whatever else. I clear the table and do the dishes after I cook. He never offers. He is nice enough to buy me an extra meal if he gets fast food, but he has never cooked at home. It goes unspoken, but I am also responsible for all the house chores. If I don't do them, they simply won't get done. This includes picking up after my boyfriend's messes, cleaning his trash, cans, clothes, etc. Of course, I try to address this with him, and it turns into a heated argument every time. I ask why he expects me to split bills 50-50 and do 100% of the housework. He then says things like, "You're lucky I'm not charging you market rent, which is $1,200, that's the entire amount of his mortgage and car loan." He claims that because I'm paying less than I was at my previous apartment where I lived alone, that I should just be happy. If I push the arguments any further, he just gets mad and starts yelling. On the other hand, when I tell him I want to leave because I don't like the arrangement, he backpedals and tries to negotiate. Not only have I been very stressed and overwhelmed with my workload, I've been disgusted with his attitude about the situation, thus I've stopped being intimate with him. I have no desire. He then started making comments like, "You should worship me as a man and I should be able to screw you whenever I want." Ew. I'm over all of it, so I'm taking the rent money that I would have given him and leaving with it next week. We had no formal long-term agreement, thankfully. Hopefully he finds someone who can keep up with his needs.
What is the most unexplained thing that's happened to you that you still wonder about to this day? Years ago, my best friend and I were in a cafe just wasting time, and we saw a man watching us through a mirror hanging on a wall across from us. Something about this man was so bone-chilling, so creepy, our gut immediately kicked in and we both looked at each other, and acknowledged how creepy and off this man was. He continued to watch us, so we left the cafe and joked about on our walk home. We were about 16 and just brushed it off. About a week later, this man came into my work. His face and whole presence was unforgettable. I texted my best friend and informed her that he was at my work, yet again, staring at me without ever looking away. He was pretending to browse the store's inventory but obviously intended on not buying anything. He stared and stared. I told a coworker and walked away for a bit. Strange, but small community and you see people everywhere. Side note, both my best friend and I have lived in this community for most of our lives and had never seen this man. Alright, fast forward to a few weeks later and we are at a store late evening in a completely different part of our huge city and we are browsing and the man is there, at this shop that we hardly visit, late, and he was there. He walks in the downstairs entrance and looks directly up at us, as we were looking over the upstairs railing. We nervously giggle and shout profanities, in disbelief this really off-putting man is here. It was crazy. We told our other friends we were with and we immediately left. A little later he returned to my place of work, spooking me just as much as he did the first time I saw him. My coworker and manager tell me to go upstairs and pretend to do something to not be around him. He immediately follows me upstairs and then my manager follows him, as he is aware of the situation and my strange sightings of this man. He hastily walks up to the desk I was behind and before. My manager can pull him away from me and ask him to leave the store. He looks right at me and says, "Can I ask you something? Do I make you uncomfortable?" I don't know what it was but something took over my body and I was filled with dread and fear and immediately started crying. I have never had anything like this happen to me. This man had never talked to me before, just looked at my friend and I really intently. My manager tells him he needs to go now and never come back. The thing is, everyone immediately picked up on the very strange, creepy, uncomfortable energy he put out. My coworker had no idea what he looked like as I had never explained, and he immediately pointed him out when he entered our work and asked if that was him. People of Reddit, what's something us Canadians aren't ready to hear? I never thought it would come to this, but here I am typing this out as quick as possible before they catch me. I should have known there was something off about him when we first started dating, but I was too blinded by love to see it. Things got intense and twisted pretty fast once we moved in together. He would come home from work and just stare at me with a creepy, unsettling look in his eyes. I tried to ignore it and pretend everything was fine, but then he started destroying my personal belongings, one by one. One day, he came home early from work and I was still sleeping in bed. I woke up to the sound of him tearing apart my favorite dress. That's when I knew I had to get out of there. I scrambled out of bed and tried to make a run for it, but he caught me and pulled me back. The look in his eyes was pure evil as he pinned me down and whispered all sorts of twisted things in my ear. I managed to wrestle free and made a break for the front door, but he was too quick and slammed it shut before I could escape. I was trapped, with no way out. That's when I realized I had to take matters into my own hands. I fought back with all my might, throwing punches and kicks until he was knocked out cold. I hastily grabbed what I could carry and bolted out the door, never looking back. Now, I'm in hiding and always looking over my shoulder. But I know deep down that I made the right decision by escaping that twisted, creepy bastard.
What's the most out-of-line thing a doctor has ever said to you? Not a doctor, but a dentist. When I was like 13 or 14 he commented on my lack of gag reflex, telling me that I'm going to be very popular with the boys. It took me a few years to realize what he meant by that. Not a doctor, but a nurse told me that I shouldn't exercise to raise my heart rate because my heart has a fixed number of beats in it before it goes out. Mental health doctor told my daughter, "You're too pretty to be depressed." That I should be happy I lost weight without trying, because other women would love it. Refused to get me tested for anything. A few months later I had a surgery to remove the tumor that made me lose weight, because another doctor treated me seriously. He unhooked my front close bra while listening to my heart/lungs with the stethoscope. He then suggested he give me a pelvic exam, and kept pushing even after I said I had a GYN already and was up to date.
10 years ago, my girlfriend abandoned me and our 5-year-old daughter. Now she wants her family back. My story begins 16 years ago when I met Lucy. She was an amazing girl, intelligent, beautiful, fancy, funny, just the greatest girl I ever met. I felt so lucky when we started dating, and after a year into the relationship, we had a baby. I was living the dream, living with my girlfriend, raising our little daughter, being a happy family. I loved Lucy so much, and after some years, we were finally getting married. Our daughter was the most excited one about the wedding. She was going to be the flower girl. Everything seemed to be perfect, until one day, when I was heading back home, a guy wanted to talk with me. At first, I believed he might want to sell me something, until he mentioned Lucy. Politely, he asked me to talk in a private place. He then asked me to please stop everything about the wedding and step back because he and Lucy wanted to be together. I didn't believe him until he started to tell me a lot of details about her that would be impossible to know. I returned home as fast as I could. I didn't want this to be true and told her about it, hoping it was all a mistake, but no, it wasn't. The next hour she told me everything. She had been cheating on me for the last 2 years. She told me about how all the time she said she loved me, that she wanted us to be together, and that she loved our family, were all lies. How her new man was younger, stronger, more handsome, and a better lover. She said that she didn't want to be tied to me, how she lost her freedom for being a mother, and she didn't want to be a wife. She wanted her freedom back. The final stab was when she said she was happy that I finally knew, and now she was able to leave. I cried, begged, humiliated myself, and got on my knees, asking for another chance to try to fix our relationship, but she didn't want to. She wanted the thrill and excitement that this new guy made her feel. By the next day, she left us. I felt broken, humiliated, emasculated, but my daughter needed me. She was heartbroken. Her mother left, and she believed it was her fault. She heard when Lucy said she didn't want to be a mother anymore. She needed me, and I needed to be strong for her. Fortunately, we had help. my family and Lucy's family supported us in any way possible. Her parents were so ashamed of their daughter's actions that they couldn't look me in the face without apologizing for everything she did. I will be in debt with everyone forever for all their help. Fast forward, 10 years later, after lots of time and therapy, my daughter and I are living happily. She is the light of my life, a beautiful 15-year-old lady whom I love. Our wounds are healed, and we have a very good life. But then, she came back. When my daughter and I were getting back home, we found Lucy in front of our apartment, waiting for us, wanting to talk. I recognized her immediately, and I would like to say that I did something cool, like ignoring her, asking her to leave, or at least being hostile with her, but no, I'm an idiot. My heart skipped a beat the moment I saw her. She still was beautiful as before, but somehow, she looked even better. Maybe age made her look mature and elegant, maybe the dress, or the makeup, I don't know, but I let her in, while our daughter gave us some space and went to her room. She told me everything she did since she left. Basically, she lived with that guy for some years. She said how much she enjoyed it, all the fun she had, and how she believed those were the best years of her life, until she noticed that the excitement of that new relationship was fading slowly. At some point, she started to cheat on that guy too. According to her, she wanted to feel alive and excited. Eventually, that relationship ended, and she started dating other guys. Every relationship became shorter than the previous one until she only had casual hookups. She also said that sometimes she thought about us, our family, but she said she was too proud to admit she made a mistake until last year. She got COVID, and it hit her really hard, to the point that she believed she would die, and realized how alone she was, how stupid she was, and the mistake she made so long ago. After all of that, she said she regretted everything she did and said, and now she was ready to marry me, and be the family we always meant to be. When she was done, I asked her to leave, to give me some time to think. She accepted, saying she would be back the next day. For years I dreamed about her coming back, and now it was happening, but it just felt wrong. Since then, she visits almost daily, wanting to talk about the best years of our relationship, and how we could be a happy family again. I asked for help, to my family, to my friends. Most of them said I would be making the worst mistake of my life if I took her back. Others said that I could give her a chance. It took me a lot to heal, and some more time to start making new relationships, and I would be risking everything. One night, my daughter and I had a deep conversation about all this. I always try to involve her in every part of our life, and this issue concerned her too because it's her mother. Sometimes she surprises me by being so wise and mature, because she told me, "Can you really love someone that hurt us so much?" And that was everything I needed. I would never forgive myself if I let her hurt my daughter again, and I said that to Lucy. If she wants to be around, or have a relationship with our daughter, I'm okay with it, only if my daughter wants it. But I told her we are not getting back. Lucy only said that she would make me fall in love with her again, and that she would not give up. Update: since the post, she has been insisting on meeting. She wanted to talk. I decided to have one last talk with her and set my boundaries. We met in a public place. The talk was long and hard. I wanted her to be honest, and I told her that the moment I caught a lie, I would leave. I asked if she was really sorry or if we were her last option. Did she truly love us, or were we just a consolation prize? Did she come back for love, or because she couldn't find another man? She couldn't answer any of that. She only said things like, "It's not like that, you need to understand me, and I'm not like this anymore." She kept insisting on giving her another chance, saying that we could love each other again and that we could be together. She never even mentioned our daughter at any moment. Only after I pointed it out did she start to mention her. When I tried to convey that we were over, she grabbed my hand and, as some of you told me she would, tried to seduce me, pulling down her blouse, showing me her chest, and suggesting we find a room so I could do whatever I wanted with her. She promised she wouldn't say no to anything, as a way to compensate me. I didn't recognize that woman. She wasn't the amazing girl I met. She wasn't the mother of my daughter. I didn't know who that woman was, but she wasn't my Lucy. I told her to let me go and that we were over. Neither I nor my daughter wanted anything to do with her, so I asked her to please leave us alone. We were living a good life without her. She then became irate, saying I couldn't leave her, that it wasn't my choice, and that she had nothing else. She claimed I couldn't take away her daughter. I still don't know why, but that last sentence triggered me. The next aren't my exact words, but they're close to what I said in that moment. Your daughter? Your daughter? You are not her mother. You only gave birth to her, but you are not her mother. Tell me, where were you when she was sick? Where were you when she had a fever? When she was scared at night? When her first tooth fell out? When she cried at night because she missed her mom? Where were you on her first day of school? When she had her first period? When she had her first boyfriend? When her heart broke for the second time? Because the first one who broke her heart was her mother. You have no right to claim you are her mother because you never acted like one. She tried to reply, but I saw she was at a loss for words. I left her. Back at home, she sent me some texts, asking for another meeting, another chance, claiming she loves me and can change. But I'm done. You all were right. She doesn't love me or our daughter at all. She only loves herself. Having her in my life would be bad and toxic. I don't need that. I don't need her. My daughter and I are going back to therapy soon. Some of you were right. I need to work on myself, become stronger, and move past those feelings for her because they're not real. They're just memories of who I thought she was.
My meat-eating boyfriend can't accept that I'm vegetarian and tried to sneak meat into my food. He went nuts and grabbed me by my hair, then tried to force chicken into my mouth. I've been a vegetarian since I was 11 years old through my own choice, and I've been living with my boyfriend who eats meat. Although my dream, ideal partner probably would be a vegetarian, I view this as a damn savage price of admission for an otherwise great guy. Usually, we cook veggie meals and he adds meat to them. If he wants a meal where that doesn't work, We just cook our own things and eat them together. The cooking works out to about 50-50 and so does the cleaning, so I don't think the problem is with that. Recently he's been really obsessed with my vegetarianism in a way he never had before. He's always made stupid jokes, but that's a better reaction than a lot of people. He's properly grilled me about it around 4 times in the past fortnight. Anyone who's been veggie knows how annoying those constant conversations are. He started genuinely saying that it's stupid, unhealthy, hipster, all that stuff. I've shown him the studies saying vegetarians usually live longer, and that a veggie and even vegan diet is accepted unanimously by dietitians as just as healthy as a meat one. He just doesn't accept it. He has a far worse diet than I do. I don't snack, don't eat fast food, don't have sugary drinks, and he does all the time. He's been asking if I'd ever quit a lot too, and whenever we talk about it, he brings it up. Now, there's been a handful of times in the past few weeks when he'll cook a meal for us and I'll notice that it's not vegetarian. Some examples: he made spag bowls saying it was corn when it just obviously wasn't. They don't look the same. When I pointed this out, he just laughed and said it was a brain fart and he forgot, which, okay, whatever, I guess that could happen. He gave me a sandwich with ham on it. Apparently, since he was making us both them and just put the ham on both, despite this never having been a problem before. Then he made himself a bacon buddy and asked if I wanted an egg. I say yes, and when I walk into the kitchen he's using the same pan that he'd used for bacon. He said he didn't know this was a problem when he 100% did because he always swapped pans before this. And it's not about the washing up, because when he cooks, I wash up, and the other way around. After that, he made chicken enchiladas and told me they were veggies. Luckily I saw the chicken when I cut it in half. Same excuses, an honest mistake. So, I stuck to only eating food I'd made, and my boyfriend got more and more antsy about cooking for me. I sat him down the next day and asked him the same stuff, if he had a problem with my vegetarianism, why he was trying to contaminate my food. Since I asked why and not if, he blew up, demanding to know why I didn't trust him, and how I could accuse him of this. He also kept trying to get me to explain why I'm veggie in the first place, but he knows this well, so I didn't let him derail the conversation. Eventually, after the most frustrating, circular argument ever, he stormed off to our bedroom. We didn't speak that night or the morning. When I got home the next day, he'd actually gone and cooked an entire chicken for us. He asked me if I'd eat it, and it was so surreal. He stood at the kitchen counter with his cooked chicken asking me to eat it when he'd never known me to eat meat, as if we hadn't been arguing about this at all. I didn't even respond. I shouldered my way past him to the fridge, which was a massive mistake. I guess he went a little nuts. I still can't really believe this happened, but he grabbed me by my hair at the back of my head and with another hand tried to force chicken into my mouth. I am still shocked by this. It was terrifying. He was so much stronger than me. He didn't succeed, and after some moments of me struggling, he let go. He just stood there, looking defeated, while I literally ran out of the kitchen, got some stuff, and went to my parents. He's agreed to move out, put up no fight for the flat or for us. When we spoke on the phone to decide this, he sounded ashamed. I'll never know why he suddenly snapped about my vegetarianism, and I frankly don't care anymore. He's obviously just a wanker to do that anyway. This past month or so has been so different to the test of our relationship. It's crazy, but there's no coming back from this. I'm well shot of him.
I depend on love for happiness. I depend on love for happiness, and I don't think that's a problem. I actually think it's the right philosophy to have. That's for me though. I understand everyone's different, and some are even asexual, want to be alone, divided by etc. I don't think this has anything to do with the cliché things people point fingers at, like self-esteem issues or not being independent. I think very highly of myself and enjoy a lot of alone time, as in almost all day every day. I believe, and more importantly feel, that my value, personality, experiences, etc. are all worthless if they're unable to be shared with someone that loves me romantically, that I also love as well. Love is probably just attachment, but maybe it's not. Nevertheless, it's what gives everything else in life its color. I enjoy other things, but they feel empty without love by my side. Losing love is like losing everything to me. No amount of self-help, the gym, working, or distractions can change this. They're all just that, distractions and coping mechanisms, branches of confirmation bias to help us deal with the less than ideal reality.
I told my aunt her cat looked like a sweaty ballsack. My mom and I were visiting my uncle and his family yesterday. My aunt just got a baby Sphinx cat. It is pink, hairless, and wrinkled. It is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. No cat should ever be without hair. She was going on and on about how beautiful it was. I will be clear, it is a very cute kitten. I however think that expensive pets are a waste and that she could have adopted a rescue. Matter of fact, she could have gotten anything. I mean anything. I don't know cat breeds, but she could have gotten an orange cat, a gray cat, a white cat, a goddamn blue cat. I don't know, I just cannot stand those stupid Sphinx cats. When we were having dinner, she was sitting with the kitten in her lap still going on about it. My uncle was rolling his eyes and my cousins were obviously getting tired of this as well. Thank God I wasn't the only one who was tired of this bee's nonsense. When she asked me for the 10th time how cute I thought it was, I told her it kind of looked like a sweaty ballsack. Like this thing is effing atrocious to look at. It is despicable to gaze upon. It is disgraceful to think about. It is detestable to imagine. It is diabolical to glance at. It is abominable. It is deplorable. If this cat was a human, it would be moderating Discord servers. This cat looks like a scrotum that has been left in the sun to suffer. This cat is foul, and I want nothing to do with it. My uncle laughed so hard he spit food all over the table. My one cousin also laughed, but his little sister kept asking what a scrotum was. My aunt became furious at me and yelled at me for how disrespectful I was being. The cat itself even scratched me as she yelled at me. Little demon. At home my mom told me I was an a-hole for using that word at the dinner table. Why do people always say that you find love when you're not looking for it? I was prepared to be single for the rest of my life. I came to that conclusion in college. Every guy I dated wanted to graduate, have their girlfriend, me, follow them to some suburbia for their job, get married, and start a family. I wanted to travel, live abroad, gain new experiences, and I didn't want to start a family for a long time, maybe ever. I never found a guy with the same goals as me. In fact, they always treated me as if it was never going to happen. I was unwilling to compromise the future I felt I was destined to have. I felt that if I gave up the future I wanted for a husband, I might resent him the rest of my life. I did not want to settle. So, I decided being single was going to be great. I thought I could travel, do mission work, and learn new languages. I could adopt children when I turned 40 because the biological clock didn't matter anymore without a husband. Life was going to be an adventure and I was ready to do it alone. This changed the way I dated. I used to show up to dates wanting to impress them, to be enough, to line up with their goals. But now, I got right down to it. I wasn't trying to impress. I wanted to see if the direction of our lives was compatible. I never seemed to find anyone like that in college. After graduating with my mechanical engineering bachelor's degree, I picked up and moved to Thailand. I'm doing my master's degree here for 2 years. I'm living the life I always dreamed of. I've learned a new language, stayed with hill tribes and farmers, traveled to different countries, and immersed myself in another culture. Now that I was living the life I always wanted, a lot of men started contacting me. Men who wanted to live the same kind of life, to live abroad, and make a difference. Men who told me what they thought I was doing was amazing, men I would consider seriously dating. It was straightforward now. I had a necessary checklist. Christian, willing to live abroad, happy and encouraging disposition, athletic, and a listener. I found love. A man who flew 9,000 miles to meet me and whisked me away to an island. A man willing to move from his house in America to live close to me in Thailand. A man who has every quality I ever dreamed of. I found it without even looking. I think when you stop looking for love, you set your life in the direction you want. Then, those who are moving in the same direction see where you're headed and want to join you. Suddenly, you're surrounded by those with the same goals and ambitions as you, and opportunities for love surround you. When you stop looking for love, you're not afraid to be alone. You're sure of who you are and people can sense that. What you see is what you get. There's no facade. Those who fall in love with you are going to fall for the real you. The best way to find love is to let love find you.
Am wasting my life. I'm 16. Don't have any hobbies, interests, friends or anything else. Probably because when I was younger, I got bullied a lot or just didn't want to do anything other kids did. So I played video games all day or watched TV. It was an unhealthy lifestyle. It worsened my mental health. I changed but not really much. I still have problems understanding how some basic things work in the world and don't have many real life skills. I took TOEIC tests. One showed 74, second 194. I got told before that I'm an idiot. Or really stupid, makes me even more anxious.
A family of customers made the waitress cry and gave her $1 tip, so my dad farted in their elevator as revenge and left them to stew in the stink. My dad was an soul. He was a lovable and compassionate soul, but piss him off and he became the pettiest you would ever meet. I have many stories about his pettiness, but this one is one of my favorites. One important thing to know about my dad is that if having the most destructive fart was an Olympic sport, he would have had multiple gold medals. Long car rides with him could be dangerous and you knew that if dad was in the toilet before you got there, you waited until anything he left dissipated, especially if he just had a nice rich meal. Anyway, dad and I loved diners. When we traveled we always asked where the good local diners were, and on one of our college trips, we arrived a little early at our hotel, so our room wasn't ready. Since we hadn't had lunch yet, we asked the clerk for their dinner recommendations, and they suggested a place not far from the hotel so we went to lunch. We had a waitress named Sandy. Why do I remember her name? Because the couple at the table near us kept yelling it over and over and over again. There were maybe 10 people in the restaurant, and Sandy cared for most of them. She was on the younger side but knew her stuff. I always like to ask what the staff likes when making my decisions, and she told me what she liked, what they were known for, and what the day grill cook excelled at. As dad and I thoroughly enjoyed our food, we watched this couple treat Sandy like she was stupid. They sent their food back multiple times and said nasty things about Sandy so loud that we had no trouble overhearing them. They tell Sandy that she's so slow and whenever Sandy goes to their table they ask for her number so they can recommend her to a club because she's more fit to be a dancer. One of their sons also accidentally spilled juice in her uniform. Every time Sandy came to drop something off or check on us, she looked more upset. Since we weren't in a hurry, we lingered over our meal, ordered dessert, and were still there when the mean couple paid their check and told Sandy loudly that since her service was so bad, all they were leaving her was $1 tip and they thought that was being generous. They left, and when Sandy came to give us our check, she looked like she had been crying. Dad went to pay the check and gave her a very generous tip. When we got in the car, he was pissed and I got to hear a lecture about how if he ever found out I treated a server like those people had, he would whoop my butt no matter how old I was. We returned to the hotel and had just checked in when another couple entered the lobby. They headed towards the elevator we were heading towards, and Dad and I both realized that the nasty couple from the restaurant had been so mean to Sandy. We got on the elevator with them. They stayed on a floor above ours. Just as the door opened on our floor and I was walking out, my dad paused, let out a large noxious fart, and said that's for Sandy and then walked off, smiling as the elevator door closed, hotboxing the nasty couple in with his equally nasty fart. I laughed so hard I cried. I feel bad for anyone who had to ride that elevator after that.
What is the saddest thing you had to do to a friend? My closest friend suffered a massive aneurysm and almost simultaneous heart attack. She was probably dead by the time she hit the floor. Nonetheless, a nurse near her began immediate CPR, which the paramedics continued as she was airlifted to a large hospital in the city. As a registered organ donor, her body needed to be kept alive until all the relevant paperwork and legally required tests were performed. Her husband called me and I got to the hospital as fast as I could. Her family were grieving in the waiting room and unable to face going into the ward. I went in and sat with her. I got the nurse who had kindly washed her hair to snip half a dozen locks, which I had tied with red satin ribbon, red being her favorite color to wear, and placed in little organza bags to give to her family. With a little encouragement, some of her family were able to come in to say goodbye, but they were distraught and found it difficult to accept that this warm, breathing, sleeping woman with a simple tube coming out of her mouth was gone. Eventually the necessary legal documents were signed and then several doctors came in to perform the required tests to prove irrefutable death. Those tests are quite confronting, but I promised her family I wouldn't leave her alone while they were being carried out. So I sat on a chair at the foot of her bed through it all. I knew then she really was gone. The doctors finished and left, and I held her hand and kissed her forehead. I was able to reassure her family that she had indeed passed. She wasn't just my friend, she was the closest thing to family that I had. What family secret was finally spilled in your family? When my paternal grandfather died, the federal government reached out to do a state funeral. He'd been career Army and a colonel, so we didn't question it. Then the funeral came and they went all out. Huge procession, people showing up who were really big names, like heads of departments, senators, retired senators, people from the CIA and State Department. It was nuts and we were all super confused. Turns out he was a key dude in the Office of Special Investigation during World War II, and when the OC splintered into the CIA and Secret Service, he went the Secret Service route. He wasn't on White House detail, but instead worked in a covert office that dealt with counterfeiting and currency. He went blind when I was a toddler and retired from the Army. For whatever reason, he told no one about all his covert work with the OC and Secret Service, and the only person who knew, my grandmother, was sworn to secrecy and never told anyone. My father grew up thinking he was just a colonel working on base. Only after his death were we given all sorts of cool shit like publications by him, lectures given by him, and all kinds of things from various things he did and was known for. All I knew him as was a blind old man who was perpetually smoking, drinking and being a grumpy man. Turns out he was a bad MF and all, but none of us knew.
How did you get back at your narcissistic ex? I tricked her into thinking she had a shot with me again and then dumped her SS. I met my ex-girlfriend Katie during our freshman year of college, and I swore she was my one and only. I was considered the fatty in our friend group, and our friends would often make fat jokes on my behalf, saying things such as, "Don't eat the table too," or, "I bet the ground shakes when you walk." They even called me Fat Al, which was weird, considering my name was Kevin. Katie usually didn't say anything to these comments. In fact, she defended me a few times. She'd tell them they were teenage dirtbags and to watch when they're 40 and have a beer belly. I thought she was my knight in shining armor, or whatever the female term for that is. I asked her out because I thought she actually wanted me and she said yes. That was the worst mistake I'd ever made. She made me absolutely miserable throughout our whole relationship. She'd constantly remind me I was beneath her because I was fatter than her. She would pull up celebrities like The Rock and say how she wished I could have looked like them instead. I always felt like I was competing with someone else who didn't exist. One day, she just stopped texting me back. I was destroyed. I would see her in school hallways, and she just would look the opposite way. I absolutely hated myself during this time because I knew that she didn't love me because I was too fat for her. When I was telling my brother about all of this, he told me to use my fitness pal and start getting skinny for her. I gave it a shot and started counting my calories and looking for healthy meals on the app. After consistently using the app for 7 months, I found myself becoming the skinny guy she wanted. But by this point, I hated her. I looked back on my fat self and realized I was better looking than what she gave me credit for. So when I started posting thirst traps of myself, I made sure she was seeing it. And slowly but surely, she'd start liking my stories and reacting to them. I just liked the comments, and slowly, she started texting me. I entertained her, telling her how much I missed her and that she was the best I've ever had. I'm sure she got a rush out of that. Then, one day, I just stopped texting back. I wish you guys saw her reaction. She started spamming me, telling me I'd regret ignoring her. I don't regret it to this day. What do super smart people do in their spare time? I have 2 friends who somehow have IQ scores above 150. That's considered pretty smart, right? Or is it just plain old intelligence? Anyway, I've spent years hanging out with these brainiacs, and whenever we get together, they rattle off about physics, stocks, and all sorts of other intelligent shit that, to be honest, can be a bit boring. One day, I finally asked them how they amassed all this knowledge. Their response? Do you have any idea what we do with our free time? I admitted I had no clue and suggested maybe they watch the History Channel or something. Nope. Instead, they spend their downtime buried in stacks of science and finance books, devouring every bit of information they can find. But that's not all. These guys are also talented musicians. One strums a guitar while the other bangs away on a drum set. And as it turns out, they're big fans of walking, just like Einstein. Only difference? They don't listen to music. Instead, they take the opportunity to let their minds wander and think deeply about everything from the intricacies of particle physics to the latest trends in the stock market. So basically, my friends read everything that's smart, science books, fact books, and anything that challenges their minds. They make music, take walks, and constantly push themselves to learn more. And honestly, it's no wonder they're such geniuses. Pawn shop workers, what is your weirdest customer encounter? I am a store manager at one of the busiest pawn shops in Northern California. I'll share 6 of the most memorable ones. 1. One day, a dude walks in with a cardboard box filled to the top with his own shit. He claims that it's magic, and my friend cuts him off right there and kicks him out. As he is walking out, he drops the box on accident, gets all of his shit on the floor, sees the mess he's made, stares at the horrid pile of shit for a couple of seconds, and runs out of the shop. The smell would proceed to linger in the shop for a good month after it was cleaned up. We would see the guy on the streets occasionally, and I don't think the guy ever got his shit together. 2. A guy brought in a stone painted green, claiming it was ancient gold and that after years it had developed a patina. I tried to explain to him that all gold is ancient gold made in something as intense as a dead star colliding, but he insisted it was gold. After about 30 minutes of discussion, he forced me to test it, and when I showed him it wasn't gold, he told me he spent $4,000 buying it from some guy. 3. Someone brought in a clump of bent and slightly melted forks and spoons, claiming it was a meteorite fallen from the International Space Station trash dump shot into space. 4. Someone brought in a costume cape claiming it was the real invisibility cloak from Harry Potter, like he genuinely didn't think it was a prop from the movie, and full-heartedly believed that it's the actual magical cape. He even tried to demonstrate it to me, and when I refused him again, he walked out, muttering, "Fucking muggles." 5. A couple used to come in once a week and pawn stuff. Well, one day, the wife decided she was done with him as a husband, snuck up behind him in the store, sprayed him in the face with pepper spray, stole his car keys and his wallet, ran out of the store, and stole his car. 6. Someone came in with an obviously recently used dialysis machine. It still had blood sprayed on it. It looked like they ripped it away while it was in use. They tried to sell it for thousands of dollars, and threatened to shoot up the place when we said no. We had to call the police on them. I hope whoever was supposed to be using the machine is alive and fine.
What would be the creepiest thing for humans to discover in the ocean? Dry land. Imagine diving so far down that you surface but it's not your surface. A door in the ocean floor. A metal hatch, ancient and corroded, with a wheel in the center, welded shut. A very advanced spaceship, with human-like remains inside. A huge eye. Imagine bumping into what you thought was coral, but then they separate to reveal a massive eyeball. Cthulhu. I mean, that would be effing scary. Mermaids. Like deep sea, realistic, intelligent mermaids. Nothing. Imagine how horrifying it would be to swim down to the depths and find nothing, just a large area where nothing grew, where no fish swam, where not even corpses could be seen. Survivors in the shipwrecks.
What's your best walk of shame story? In college, one of the bigger sororities had almost weekly socials at their sorority house. These socials were just formal spring and summer parties. These girls were wild. Their brother fraternity, who was always there, was just as wild. To say that these parties were fun would be a deep understatement. My roommate at the time was dating the vice president of the sorority, so he went to these socials every weekend, and by proxy, I was always invited. I was single at the time, so I was always game to party with these girls. There was one caveat: this sorority had a strict no guys sleeping over policy. This created an interesting problem. If you met one of the sisters that you had a rapport with, hooking up at the sorority house was not an option. Furthermore, pledges were not allowed to sleep anywhere else but the sorority house, thus making it impossible to hook up with a freshman or new pledge. The sorority's president, we are going to call her B, had achieved legendary beach status. If rumors were to be believed, she would crucify and steal all of the future children of any pledge that broke the rules. It was known, especially among the fraternities, that B was not to be effed with. She could put a man in his place with so much as a stare. Despite this, she was very attractive. Tall, former volleyball player, pale-skinned brunette. Heaven help any young fraternity pledge that made a pass at her or behaved in any sort of chauvinistic manner in her presence. At best, she would destroy their masculinity with her words. At worst, she could get them blackballed. Have I painted a clear enough picture of B? Stick with me, these details are important for the climax. Oh yeah, small but important detail, B was also my roommate's girlfriend's best friend. Let's get to the night of my story. It was a humid Saturday night in late June. My roommate's girlfriend invites me to her sorority social that evening, but throws me a curveball. She tells me that I have to keep B company. Now, up until now, I've been to 5 or 6 of these socials and only had minimal interaction with B. Frankly, the stories of her righteous beach hammer scared me enough that I would consciously make myself scarce if I ran into B in the sorority house. My roommate's girlfriend must have sensed my uneasiness, and immediately assures me that she's actually pretty awesome if you get to know her and that she only has that reputation because she's protective, and finally that B is totally crushing on me. I reluctantly agreed to keeping B company, fully expecting to leave the social that night with one less ball sack than I currently have. Since this is already running long, I'll skip the finer details of that night and give the cliff notes. Scared as I was, B was surprisingly sweet to me. She drank a little more than I recall her doing in the past, and got very touchy with me. She fed me drinks well into the wee hours. Not being much of a drinker myself, this got me absolutely tossed. At some point we went to her room and proceeded to hook up, and did so quite loudly for a few hours. Here is the turning point in the story. She told me to stay with her. Remember how I said guys were not allowed to stay the night? The sorority president was breaking her own rule. Now comes the shame. Around 8 a.m. the following morning, my roommate's girlfriend, along with 5 other sisters, entered B's room. B and I are both naked as jaybirds, under the sheets thankfully, when they enter. My roommate's girlfriend and the other sisters proceed to read the riot act to be about breaking the rules and allowing a guy to stay the night and how unfair it is that their boyfriends are not allowed. B is silently listening to their concerns. While this is going on, I am nervously trying to grab my boxers off of the floor with my toes. I manage to get them, and slide them on under the covers. I stand up out of the bed and grab my clothes to make my hasty retreat. Out the door. Roomie's girlfriend stops me. Atlantic Fit, sit down, you are the evidence. At this point, I decided silence and complacency is my best course of action until this spat reaches its conclusion. After a few minutes of back and forth, B relents, and agrees to change the rules to allow a guy to stay one night a week. It was at this juncture that I got the feeling that this was a setup by my roommate's girlfriend, as she was always complaining about how he could never stay with her because of the house rules. I slowly began to suspect that she had planned this with the other sisters and that I was just the catalyst to make this change. When the other girls left the room, I quickly dressed, assured B that I would call her, and left the room. The front door was on the other side of a breakfast nook that I had to walk through to leave. The entire sorority is sitting in this breakfast nook, discussing what just went down in B's room. As I pass through, they all fall silent, staring at me. My roommate's girlfriend says, "Thanks for your help, Atlantic Fit." As I shut the front door, I hear 30 sorority girls burst into laughter like a coven of witches. To this day, I have never felt so used. When did you realize you were different? I had an interesting conversation with my family about the Don't Say Gay bill and when it's appropriate to introduce kids to the concept of homosexuality. I was asked about my perspective as the lesbian in the room, and I told them that I knew I was different at around 6 years old. I didn't outright know I was gay because I didn't know that was a thing, but I knew that I wasn't excited about boys, and the concept of having a husband weirded me out. Which is perfectly normal for a 6-year-old girl to be disgusted by boys, but I always liked the idea of being with a girl and that never changed. I finally stopped trying to convince myself I was straight at 14 to 15, and I'm glad to have stopped judging and hating myself for my homosexuality. My brother said he could barely remember first grade and can't remember thinking about this kind of stuff. So I told him he didn't really have to think about it. He was born in a heteronormative society, so whatever feelings he had towards girls at that age was considered normal. Meanwhile, I had to recognize that I was different because I was feeling things that were against the norm, which caused a lot of stress at that age. I didn't know what I was because I didn't know what to call it. I didn't even know 2 girls being together was a thing. So what about you? When did you realize you were different? Try and damage my car? I'll let you destroy your own in the process. A few weeks ago, I found myself parked next to a car that was, as far as I could tell, identical to mine. Same make, Subaru, model, Outback, color, muddy green, and probably same year, although I'm not an expert. Close enough, probably. It's a popular car. I pass them all the time. My car has a large parking lot ding on the driver's side rear door panel. No idea how it got there. Probably some kid opened his door a little too quickly/forcefully and it smacked into my car. These things happen. It doesn't bother me and I've been putting off getting it fixed, yet I'm a little sorry that I didn't do it because it would have saved the idiot a lot of grief. Me and the idiot both exit the Walmart with full carts, and he's about 100 feet ahead of me. As we approach, I'm thinking it looks like he's heading in the same direction. I even plan on jokingly saying nice car. In Subaru solidarity. Thought looking back, I'm happy I didn't. I should mention here that I've already clicked my clicker to unlock the car. It'll be important later. Now that I definitely should not have done. This is the point where the idiot notices the large ding on his car's door. And he takes offense at that. To be fair, that ding is pretty ugly. The paint is gone where the tip or something from whatever hit it was centered, and there's a scratch leading off to one side. I think it kinda looks like a spoon in the middle of a small/shallow cereal bowl. So anyway, he gets pissed. Like screaming things like son of a beach. And it's a effing brand new car. And stuff. I think he looked up at the windshield, hoping to find a note or something, but this all happened so fast that my brain might be making up details to fit into the blank spots. I've actually slowed down a bit by now because it's uncomfortable being around someone so enraged. And to be honest, I was super confused about what was going on.
For a second, I actually forgot.
Which car was whose? It didn't make sense for him to be hopping mad about my car having a dent. I think my brain was going, wow, 2 exactly same cars getting huge parking lot dings in them. What are the odds? But you know that weird twisting feeling where you reorient yourself from the confusion and snap back to reality? That happened. I realized that he had made the same mistake that I made. And so I did what anyone would naturally do. I called out, "Hey, it's okay. That's my car." Which backfired. Spectacularly. The idiot must have thought that I meant that's my car's door that smacked into yours. Which only made him madder. He started yelling things like what the F? And more of it's a effing brand new car. And more of the same. I tried to explain, not exactly easy from a distance and definitely a lot harder when someone is raging at you. And that's when he opened the driver's side rear door on my car, i.e. the one with the large ding. And then he slammed it into his car. Hard. It made a dent, took a little paint off the edge of my door too, but I didn't notice that until later. So at that point I yelled, "Hey! Stop that!" Which only made him more upset, because he responded with, "Oh, you don't like that? Shut the F up." Or words to that effect. I'm paraphrasing here. So, I guess in a nutshell that's my malicious compliance. I did exactly what he said, shut the F up and let him slam my car door into his car a couple more times. And I let him try to kick it too. There wasn't enough room between the two cars for a good roundhouse, so he had to be satisfied with a weak sauce knee to the rear quarter panel. But kudos for trying, idiot. You gave it your best shot. Seeing him suddenly realize that he had been beating the poop out of his own car was truly one of the funniest and most satisfying moments I've ever witnessed. Have you ever made fun of a suicide victim? A month or so ago, one of my coworkers took time off of work because her 17-year-old son tragically passed away. I live in a small town, so words gets around fast. Apparently, her son was facing a lot of bullying in school and was outcast by everyone due to reports of him engaging in intimate activities with a goat. Whether these rumors are true or not, I will never know. I assume he was battling depression from it all as well as having his reputation be tarnished forever. He managed to get a hold of a firearm and tragically took his life with it. His mother was the one who found him in his room. Today was her second day back at work. This morning I gave her my condolences and we all expressed our grief towards her and tried helping her settle back into work. Towards the end of my 10-hour shift I was very exhausted, and decided to sit down. My coworker and I made eye contact. Not thinking, I put my fingers to my head and pretended to squeeze the trigger as the universal sign of this sucks. As soon as I did that I realized my mistake. She immediately got a horrified look on her face and I turned away immediately. She rushed over to me crying and attempted to slap me for my actions. Something I cannot even blame. One of the other coworkers saw her attempt this and managed to restrain her. She actually teared up but managed to explain through it all what I did, and when she did the other coworker was just as horrified. So much so, the other coworker actually slapped me instead. At the end of the day I got written up for my behavior and am now set to meet up with the manager as well as my coworker to discuss my actions. Not a great way to end my Friday. My opportunistic brother refuses to pay me for the renovation of his house, so I involved my parents in our inheritance. I do house renovations as a business. Even when I do work for family and friends at a discount I have a contract. So when my nephews are getting bigger and they want separate rooms, my brother asked me to help him finish his basement, make a couple of rooms down there, add a washroom, add a kitchenette, and wire up a family room. I priced it out and said I would charge him $32,000 including materials. This was a sizable discount. The bathroom alone would charge anyone else $15,000. He wasn't even roughed in. He never paid me and he always had excuses. I paid for the material and I paid my guys for the work. We did it when I had downtime so I didn't lose out on other money, but it still sucked to get shafted. So I put a construction lien on the house. He didn't care and I wasn't going to make him homeless. That was 2 years ago. Now he got a new job and has to move, and to get a new house he has to sell his current house, which he can't do because there is a lien against the property. He called me to get me to remove it. He promised he would pay me as soon as it sold. I told him, "F you, pay me." My parents called me to tell me that they would pay what he owes. I said I would agree so long as he paid them back, and if he didn't then any money he didn't pay back had to come out of any inheritance we were getting, God forbid. And that interest started accruing from the day of the loan. They agreed that that was fair. My brother called me to scream at me for involving my parents in our inheritance. I reminded him that he involved them, not me. He finally took money out from a line of credit and paid me, with interest. I'm a reasonable man. The house sold over asking and the finished basement suite made a huge difference on what he got. He is still pissed at me for doing it, but I did everything legal and by the books. I saw videos of my fiancée cheating during her bachelorette party and don't know what to do. My girlfriend and I were together for 4 years, and we were engaged to be married. Last weekend, she had her bachelorette party. I didn't have a problem with it, especially after what she told me was the plan. She and some friends were going to rent a big place with like 4 bedrooms, and they were just going to get trashed and party and hang out. On the day of the party, she was at my place, a 2-bedroom apartment where one room is used as my home office. I am a self-employed investor. She made all the arrangements and went to meet her friends. We texted a little, but as the party warmed up, we stopped, and I figured they were just having fun. After midnight, I started getting ready for bed and noticed that the computer in my office wasn't turned off. The black screen was just a screensaver. It turns out my fiancée had not logged out, and her messenger was still open on the computer. There was a group chat where she and the girls had been planning everything, and a lot of videos were uploaded to the chat. I was a little curious, so I started watching some of the videos. Most of them were pretty innocent, just a group of 15 girls getting drunk, stoned, dancing and whatever. Then there was a video of a woman going to the front door, and about 10 guys entered the apartment. I didn't know who they were, and I didn't recognize anyone. There were a couple of videos of the guys and girls dancing and drinking, and then the worst happened. A video started of my fiancée making out with a guy on the sofa. She stopped and rolled over and started making out with a second guy. Then there was a video of her and the 2 guys going into a bedroom. There was also a video of them coming out that, according to the timestamps, was 5 minutes later. However, that doesn't mean anything. For all I know, the videos were an hour apart, and they were all just uploaded at the same time. Seeing all this was like a sledgehammer to the gut. I walked into the bathroom because I thought I would be sick. I wasn't, but I feel like I paced back and forth in the apartment for about 30 minutes. Then I poured myself a rocks glass full of whiskey and chugged it down. I saved the videos and then made one of my own, just a short little selfie video of me saying, "Hi, this is Jason, your ex-fiancé." Just wanted to say I saw the videos from the party, and the wedding is off. I hope it was worth it. I'm glad I saved the videos because in less than 10 minutes, they were all deleted. Soon after, my phone started blowing up, but I didn't answer any calls or texts. At first, it was just my girlfriend texting, saying she can explain and it's not what it looked like. Then her friends joined in, but I ignored everyone and didn't respond. Then suddenly, I got a request for a video chat, and I'll admit my curiosity got the better of me. I answered the call but didn't say anything. It was my fiancée sitting in front of the camera, and she looked like she had been crying, with her friends just around her. I really only know maybe 4 of the friends, but I recognized a lot of the others. First, she started apologizing but kept saying it wasn't what it looked like. It was just a party, and the guys coming over were not planned or anything like that. She said it might have looked bad, but nothing happened. When I didn't say anything, she just kept going on with more of the same, and her friends backed her up. The more I didn't speak, the more hysterical she got. Eventually, she admitted to kissing the 2 guys but dumped the blame on her friends. They all took responsibility for that, which surprised me a little. She said the kisses didn't mean anything, and that's all that happened. Then she seemed to remember the video of her going into the bedroom, and she started screaming that it was just a joke, and nothing happened. All the other women confirmed it was just a joke, and that my fiancé had walked into the room and then turned around and walked out again. This just kept going on, and they just kept repeating themselves. Eventually, everyone got quiet, and all I said was, "Is there anything else to add?" She said no, and I just ended the video call. I knew she was lying. I went on social media and changed my relationship status to single and posted that the wedding was off, and if anyone had bought a present, they should feel free to return it. My fiancé saw the post and started freaking out even more, and she just kept insisting that all she did was kiss and nothing else. I sent her a text saying if I found out that she or any of her friends are lying to everyone about what happened or trying to make me the bad guy, then I will post all the videos online. Right now, no one else knows what is happening. This was a couple of days ago, and everything for the wedding was cancelled. My fiancé just keeps pursuing me. Any advice on what I should do from here? Coworkers who turned out to have ulterior motives, what were they and how did you find out? I've got a wild story to tell you. I'm not just some boring office worker doing data entry. My job may seem like the most mundane thing ever, but it's actually a cover for international espionage. A couple months ago, I started at this office and was busy plugging away at some data entry when Steve comes up to me. He asked if I was new and after confirming, he introduced himself and started shooting the poop with me. Steve seemed genuinely interested in what I was working on and offered to help out since it looked like a huge task. This struck me as weird because in an ordinary office, colleagues don't usually offer assistance unless there's something else going on. My curiosity piqued. I decided to go along with it and accepted his offer since we both knew we'd be there late that night anyway. We worked our asses off until 8:30 p.m. before finally finishing up the data entry for the day. That's when Steve turns to me and suggests grabbing drinks after work to celebrate our progress, which only made my suspicions grow even more because that kind of behavior isn't normal in an office setting. I hesitated but politely declined, saying that I had plans with friends already, even though that wasn't true. When I told my girlfriend about this later that night, she couldn't stop laughing at how strange the whole situation was. We spent hours speculating about why Steve had offered his help. Was he part of some secret society or did he just want to date? Either way, all these possibilities were way more interesting than worrying about whether or not we'd run into each other tomorrow while entering numbers into spreadsheets side by side. I unintentionally fell into a family with my best friend. And it's the greatest thing to ever happen to me. I had a very rough childhood growing up. I didn't have a dad, and my mom was never really there because she had a fierce battle with health issues and got hooked on narcotics. I had friends growing up, but I had my best friend since I was 12. Her name is Lily. We have been extremely close due to our childhood issues. And we had always been there for each other. We talked about being together but got cold feet because we were scared that if it didn't work, we couldn't recover. When I was 18, I didn't want to go to college. The school had never been for me. So I went into a trade. I work long hours, but it's been worth it, and I am making solid money right now for my position. I'll come back to this in a bit. When we were 19, Lily got pregnant by her boyfriend. The dude somehow managed to avoid child support payments and broke up with her and has not seen the kid once in his life. Complete deadbeat. Makes me disgusted. Lily was scared, but I told her I would be here when she needed it. She didn't have parents who would help, but I told her I'd help when the kid got here. Lo and behold, she gave birth to a beautiful little girl named Kelsey. I was there when she was born, and it was a weird moment, to say the least. I don't know how to explain it, but I did feel happy for her. Now we're 21, and ever since, this little girl has wrapped me around her finger. I've done my round of the diapers, bottles, middle of the night, screaming, etc. We sit there and watch her little shows every day I get home from work. And we spend a lot of time together as the three of us. When we walk, she grabs my pointer finger with her whole hand because it's so tiny. She stands up and kisses me on the cheek after I change her. And she loves her snuggles where she just lays on top of me with her head against my chest. As of recently, she has begun speaking, and she has been calling me Daddy. I've been feeling really weird about it lately, feeling like it's not right and that she needs to know the truth someday. I talked to Lily about it the other night and got her opinion. She sat there with a slight smile, then came up behind me and hugged me. She said, "You're the best dad she could ever ask for," and then proceeded to tell me we'll worry about talking to her when she understands. As far as she is concerned, you are her daddy. And you are to me as well. I turned around and hugged her. We talked long about what's been happening lately as we've been engaging in not so just guy activities. And she just said I like this. I want our family. I froze for a second and asked her, is this what we want to do? And she followed up by saying, I think we've been doing this for a while now, and then laughed. We had a great moment and agreed to be a family. I had told her I needed to run to the drugstore for some diapers for Kelsey. On the way there, I burst into tears. I cried for a good 30 minutes. I didn't even know how to describe my thoughts and feelings, but I was happy. I know that there isn't a thing in this world I wouldn't do for those two. It feels like I can relax and reflect on everything that's happened, but I don't. I basically have a family I'm looking out for. Like, no matter what happens, I have people who will depend on me. And something like that makes me want to be the best man I can be. In about another year, I will have my official license for my trade, giving me a substantial pay raise and a new job that I already have lined up. I've already started looking at houses and rings. We've also talked about having our own once I get my license. I wanted to share it with someone. But I don't really have those people in my life.
I don't think my fiancé wants to marry me. I met my fiancé about 7 years ago at a beach cleanup thing a mutual friend of ours organized. We hit it off instantly and we went out for coffee a few days later, and now here we are. In the beginning, I made it very clear that I was dating to marry and had my timeline, and this was the first bump we had in our relationship. He wasn't necessarily afraid of commitment, but he wasn't big on the idea of getting married a few years down the road, like 4 or 5-ish years. However, we overcame this issue and we've been happy ever since. I'd say it all started 2 years ago when one of my close friends got married. At the reception, my friends and I got together outside and started talking when the bride, my close friend, mentioned how funny it was that I was the one who had been in a serious relationship the longest and yet the only one who wasn't married or engaged. I laughed and my other friends just added to it, and it was just something funny we were laughing about. I didn't think of it much until I got home, and it got me thinking. The next morning I brought it up to my fiancé and he simply brushed it off, and I didn't push the subject. Funny enough, I work as a wedding planner, so I plan my friends' weddings free of charge, and this just made me grow desperate. I didn't make it known that I was waiting for him to propose, but I waited in silence. He proposed last year and it was one of the best moments of my life. It was everything I'd ever dreamt of. So to the point, I've spent the last year planning the wedding, and it's coming along great, but I've been a little put off by the way he acts whenever I bring up wedding stuff. He just ignores the topic altogether, like literally changing the subject to something that has nothing to do with the wedding or marriage in general. Sometimes I just have to push the subject because I want his input on things. I want this to be our day, not just mine, and it bothers me how awkward he gets whenever I bring it up. Then, in recent months, mutual friends of ours have mentioned how surprised they were that he proposed to me. They said they thought he'd never get married because he just wasn't a family man or anything like that. They'd go as far as to say he only proposed because he pitied how much I wanted to get married. I asked him about it a few days ago because the idea was getting to me and I needed to voice my concerns, and he said he didn't give his input because he trusted my judgment, believe it or not. This didn't make me feel better in the slightest, and it bothered me even more, so I pushed it. He just said if it brings a smile to your face, then it's worth it, although cute. That is not the response I need from him right now.
What happened that made you walk out of the courtroom and think, that did not just happen? I remember being in a car accident that I was not at fault for. The woman that hit me spoke only Spanish and needed a translator at the scene. She lied to the police officer about what happened. I ended up being held responsible plus receiving a ticket with a court date required. I was so pissed that the other responding officer told me he was going to put me in his squad car if I didn't stop yelling at her. A few weeks later, I arrived to court and spotted out the woman and her translator. The both of them gave me dirty looks. I didn't care one bit. It was time for us to go to the stand to face the judge. We swore under oath and questioning began. The judge asked the woman and her court-given translator to go first on what happened, in addition, asking her what direction she was traveling during the accident. The woman didn't answer the question. She immediately told the judge how aggressive, loud, and mean I was to her. The judge asked the question again. She still didn't answer, but said how in detail I hit her. The judge asked the question one last time. She answers. It was my turn to speak. I had a diagram of the area where the car accident took place. It included her vehicle and mine's. I intended to be detailed so the judge could understand what happened. I asked her, may I step up to your stand? Judge answered, yes you may. Reliving the accident in my mind, I pointed out everything that happened using the diagram. Judge says, oh, I see what happened here. I didn't know what she meant, but I was sweating profusely. The outcome of this wasn't clear yet. Judge asked us both for final remarks. The woman continued to let the judge know how mean and loud I was, how the police officer was on her side, and how I hit her. I could not believe this woman was lying the way she was. Yes, that part was true, me being loud/mean, but I didn't care about her saying that. I wanted her to tell the truth about how she hit me. I suddenly had a change of heart. I regretted the way I treated her at the scene, plus allowing my temper to get out of control. Either way, there is always the opportunity to handle things with maturity, logic, and respect. Next thing I know, the judge ruled in my favor and the woman was responsible for the ticket. I looked over and her mouth was on the floor. I mean, wide open. The court-given translator was helping her pick it back up while she spoke in Spanish with great aggression and emotions. I walked out in shock, like that did not just happen.
I let my dog's nails grow way too long out of procrastination, and it led to him almost ripping a stranger's face clean off. I learned soon after getting my German Shepherd puppy that I was a complete effing idiot to get such a large breed as a first-time pet owner. Don't get me wrong. I love my boy Leo. He ran straight to me the day I picked him up. He wakes me up every day with kisses, and I do love coming home to his happy dances. But at the same time, the list of things I have to train him to do feels never-ending and overwhelming. Although he slowly got better when it came to things like potty training and walking on the leash, even after 6 months, trying to get his nails cut has been a disaster. He's very sensitive about his feet even when all I'm doing is wiping off the mud from his paws. He just starts whining and pulls it back. That being said, nothing could have prepared me for the very first time I took him to a groomer. By that point, his nails were curled and I noticed him whining and chewing on them at night. I finally decided to take him for a walk-in nail trim at my local PetSmart, and the girl behind the counter was gentle as she put him right on her table in front of me. But to my horror, I watched my usually sweet boy turn into a total monster right before my eyes. I had never seen him like that. She leaned down next to him trying to talk comfortingly in her ear, but the second she touched his foot he bucked his head straight up into her jaw and tried snapping at her face. My heart almost stopped as I realized that if she had pulled away a second too late he would have literally ripped a chunk of her face out. Even though he was still a puppy, Leo weighed about 50 pounds at the time and his teeth are gigantic and sharp. I just kept thanking her and apologizing as I took him back. I gave Leo a break for a couple of days after that. During that time I watched a video on how to cut your dog's nails at home, and it seemed easy enough. I thought he might behave better for me. His mom, despite his behavior at the groomers, which in hindsight was pretty stupid. I bought a pair of doggy nail clippers from Amazon, put some peanut butter on the wall to distract him, and tried my best to cut his nails a week later. I tried to clip his nails at home, only actually managing to cut 2 of them as he kicked and growled at me with all his might. I could barely keep a grip on his paw, and it took me a second too long to realize that I had made both of the nails I had cut bleed. It was awful. I started crying and so did Leo. He kept licking his hurt paw and whining as I tried to stop the bleeding with a towel and band-aids, but nothing was working. Even after 10 minutes of me cleaning and dabbing his nails, he couldn't walk around without trailing blood from his foot. I felt like such a terrible dog owner, and at that point, I didn't know what else to do but rush him to the vet. It was maybe 9 p.m. and the only 24-hour emergency vet was 40 minutes away. When we finally got there, we had to wait another half hour in the lobby. The anxiety of that night almost broke me. When they finally took him I could hear him immediately misbehaving for the vet techs and I felt bad for them. They had to put him under anesthesia and ordered to clip the rest of his nails, and with the emergency fees my bill ended up being almost $400. It was half of my paycheck, and if the bill had been any higher I might not have made my rent the next month. I cried while driving home that night, not knowing what the hell I was gonna do if I had to pay nearly $400 to get my puppy's nails clipped. I spent a couple of days feeling bad for myself after that crappy night, but eventually I realized I needed to stop feeling like a victim and be a better parent to my baby. I decided to do some research, and even called around to get quotes from other vets on nail clippings, but shockingly I couldn't find a single vet in my area that would clip his nails under anesthesia for less than $150. I couldn't afford that and that I had no other choice but to find a way to clip them at home. Even if the last time had gone so poorly, at least I knew I needed to take some precautions. After doing more research, I found a lot of info from other pet parents in situations almost exactly like mine, and I decided to buy 2 simple solutions based on everything I had read. I bought some styptic powder to pack into injured nails, and a pair of medical dog boots to wrap his foot up and stop any bleeding. It broke my heart to stress my baby out like that again, but I tried my absolute best to cut his nails at home even though he fought like a demon all over again. I did end up cutting a couple of them too short, but this time I stayed calm. It was hard, yet I managed to put a bit of the powder on the bleeding nails and wrap them up in the soft dog boot. As soon as I wrapped his foot up, Leo seemed to calm down and start licking my hand. I kept the little boots on him for maybe an hour, and almost cried from relief when I took them off to see not a single spot of blood anywhere on his feet or nails. After that successful night, Leo and I got into a routine of cutting his nails in the same way every 2 weeks, and every time he calmed down a tiny bit more, and every time the medical dog boots healed any bleeding in the blink of an eye. As much as I love my sweet Leo boy, I can't help but think about how much money I saved on vet or groomer bills. After he had suffered so badly at the groomers and the vets, not to mention how my wallet suffered, I was so relieved to have finally found a solution to what felt like an impossible task. All I wanted was to be able to maintain his nails. His health is the most important thing in the world to me, and when it looked like I might not be able to do that, it scared the hell out of me. I'm just so grateful for the both of us that I was able to find his silly little medical dog boots, and be able to cut his nails at home where he feels safest. My sister wants me to give her one of my newborn twins because I already have kids. She said it isn't fair that I get to have kids and she doesn't. My sister Andrea has found it hard to conceive for so long. Even when she did have a child thrice, she miscarried each time. Her last pregnancy was 3 years ago. She was in hysterics at that time. I asked her whether there was anything I could do. She admitted that it's unfair I have a child, and she doesn't, talked about how it might be her fault, etc. She was sobbing so hard I thought she might pass out. Nothing I say would ever convince her, and in the end, I said, if you want a child, I'll give you mine if I ever get pregnant again. Now, please stop blaming yourself. I regretted it immediately, but I already said it. So, when she asked me whether I really meant that, I said yes. It's been 2 years, and I recently gave birth to twins. Throughout the pregnancy, she was very supportive, and nothing seemed off. But it's been a few weeks since they were born, and she approached me to say congratulations and asked me to hand over one of the babies now. I was surprised/shocked, but she reminded me of my promise and said I can't back away from it now and that I have 3 kids anyway. I have a girl from my first pregnancy and a boy and a girl from the latest one. I straight up refused and asked her to F off. She began to start crying and yelled that I had promised and that I betrayed her, etc. We got into an argument, and when my husband learned about it, he yelled at her himself and asked her never to show up to his house again, etc. We had a large verbal sparring along with her and her husband. A few of my family are also saying that I should give up the child and that there's nothing wrong with her raising them, etc. I am not backing down, though, but they're saying I did promise. Am I the a-hole?
I ruined my mom's life and I have no regrets. My mom was my best friend. We did everything together and told each other everything. We were very close. I didn't think anything could get between me and my mom. When I was 10, she got a new boyfriend, we'll call him Daniel. He moved in after about a month of them dating. Daniel was really nice at first. For about a year we all got along and everything was well. He started to become a father figure for me. After a while he started to get abusive. At first it was just verbal. Daniel degraded her and complained about everything we did. Then things got physical. I remember the first night very vividly. They started arguing because she found out he was cheating. She told him to leave. Daniel didn't like that. He hit her hard and fell to the floor. My mom is 5'5", he's 6'4". She got up and he slammed her into the wall. He eventually put her head through the drywall. I remember watching this from the living room couch and running to my room when he started hitting her against the wall. After that he started hitting me too. At first when he would hit me, Mom would try to stop it. Then everything changed. Mom started to treat me differently. Instead of hanging out with me and doing things with me all the time, suddenly she never came out of her room. When she did, she was angry and impatient. She would scream at me about the smallest things and always took his side during arguments. 6 years I put up with them treating me like trash. Eventually I couldn't do it anymore. Over those years I learned why my mom was acting differently. He got her addicted to meth and pills. They also sold them. One day I finally figured out how I was going to get back at them. He sold out of our house, so it wasn't hard to get evidence. I got video and audio footage of drug deals along with a text convo. We had a big garage in the backyard that he cooked out of. I called the cops. They raided the garage and found their stash. Watching them get put in the cop cars, I finally let out all the past 6 years of tears. I'm now 24 and married to an amazing caring man named Justin. We have a 3-year-old named Haley and I couldn't be happier. Things do get better. Why Pluto was the weirdo in the friend group. Out of the group of big, normal-sized planets, Pluto was the little dwarf in the family. Quite literally. For years, people considered Pluto the final planet in our solar system. There were literal songs for children to memorize Pluto as their final part. That was until a little bit of exploration decided that Pluto, our baby planet light years away from us, was no longer one of us. Everyone rallied against this decision. I mean, everyone still protested the unfair treatment of Pluto. But what if our legendary little hero is, in fact, a fraud? He's an Edward Cullen in a world of Jacob Blacks. For years, we considered Pluto a planet until one day. We found several more planets just like it. All of them were extremely different from the planets as we knew them, tiny, icy, and they didn't even follow the rules and follow the sun in the same way. Every other planet had some sort of family, but Pluto was a little orphan for years. There was the clique of the possible life, with the precious golden child Earth who just had to have life. They also included Mars, Earth, Venus, and Mercury. They were small, too, but Pluto was too tiny to compare. It's like putting a midget next to a 5 feet 2 inches pick-me girl. They had heavy insides full of iron. Then there were the Jocks gas giants like Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune. Just like Jocks, they're full of gases that could probably unalive the typical human. Then there's little old Pluto. All alone, far away from the sun. He was nothing like his counterparts until they found another of his kind, Eris. That made every scientist turn their head and think, what the hell is wrong with these planets? So they made special rules so that they could specifically exclude Pluto from their beloved planets. As an act of planet racism, they made these 3 rules that define planets as planets. 1. A planet has to be massive enough to be pounded into a roundish shape. 2. A planet has to orbit the sun. 3. A planet has to clear objects out of its orbit. Do you want to know what phony excuse they used to kick Pluto out? Pluto doesn't clear objects out of its orbit. But you want to know something? Jupiter also doesn't clear all objects out of its orbit. It's pure dwarf racism. At least now, Pluto has made his own found family with all the other dwarf weirdo planets.
Husband told me he self-pleasures to his favorite intimate times with his exes. My husband told me he pleasures himself to remembering intimate times with his exes. I don't know why he told me this, but he did, and now I'm really hurt. He says he likes to do it to his favorite times with them and then told me about what they were. Now I'm traumatized. Like, what the hell? Why can't he fantasize about something not real or corn? Why does he have to keep these things alive in his mind? Mind you, I found out he was looking up his exes and was contemplating contacting them. He didn't, but it might be because I found out about it. Is self-pleasuring to previous girlfriends normal? Like, I'm sure it is, but it's his main go-to when he does it. He also said he would do it to their pictures if he could find one on social media, but he didn't come across one. Do guys find pictures of exes and pleasure themselves to them? Is this normal? I said I'm not okay with this, and he said sorry, but said he didn't think it would have been a big deal to me. How could he not know this wouldn't be okay with me? Am I crazy?
My deadbeat parents disowned me for beating up my twin brother after he slept with my girlfriend. 8 years later they want to reconnect with me and I don't know why. Growing up I was the black sheep of the family and I knew that from a very young age. My parents weren't exactly secretive about it. The problem was that my family is full of athletes who played basketball, soccer, softball, and football professionally. On the other hand, I was interested in archery, which my family called a wimpy sport. I had to beg my parents to come to my tournaments, but they never showed. I was never neglected by them, but they were never emotionally there for me as they were for my siblings, and as a teenager I resented that. Whenever I tried to bring this up to them, they would always call me an attention seeker. Things took a turn for the worst when I was 15 and began dating a girl from my class. I really liked her, and though I was young, I could see myself having a future with her. After 6 months of dating, I introduced her to my parents and siblings, who all really liked her. We dated for 2 years and I was really happy with her, until I found out she was cheating on me with my own twin brother. She told me that while at first she loved me, the love she had for my brother surpasses that. Later that same day, I went home to confront my brother. I was so enraged that I sucker punched him and knocked him out. I admit that I should have not gotten violent, but years of resentment towards him and the rest of the family just burst open. In exchange for my family not pressing charges on me as I could have been tried as an adult in court, I was sent to live with my paternal aunt, who at this point was estranged from the family and lived in another city about 2 hours away. From then on, I have not had any contact with them and they didn't bother contacting me. At first, it was tough because I knew they didn't like me, but this felt too far. With support from my aunt and her husband, I was able to move on from wanting a relationship with them and knew that this was for the better. Since then, I graduated from school, met my beautiful wife, and we were blessed with a daughter a year ago. Just when my life was going great, I received a message from my parents, asking me to celebrate Christmas at their house to reconnect. The whole thing was honestly really sketchy because we hadn't spoken in 8 years, and knowing my parents, they definitely had ulterior motives. I just didn't know what they were at the time. Still, I told them that I would consider it as I possibly have other plans, but would give them a clear answer soon. But then my brother and sister sent me friend requests, which felt weird to me since they always preferred my twin over me. They didn't even like people knowing we were related. I doubt they would want them knowing we were friends. Should I go and try to reconcile with my family or not? On one hand, they perhaps feel bad about what they did to me and want to apologize for what they did, but on the other hand, perhaps if I go there, they will try to make me apologize to Casey, which I do not want to. Update: after lots of thinking, I told them that I decided to spend the holidays with my wife. I assumed they would try to argue with me, but instead they said they respected my opinion and could not wait to see me after the holidays. I was really confused as to why they wanted to see me so badly again. So, I went to talk to my aunt who raised me about the whole thing. That's when she told me the whole truth. A month ago, my grandpa reached out to ask about me and what I was doing in my life. My aunt was quick to call him out for wanting to know about me after he supported my twin for what he did. My grandpa told my aunt that I deserved to be estranged because I had cheated on my girlfriend with one of her close friends. My jaw dropped. My parents had changed the entire narrative of the original story. He had been told by my family that after the friend who I allegedly cheated with confessed to my ex, she went to my twin and sister for support and comfort. Apparently, when I found out about this, I confronted and brutally attacked my siblings. While my sister was the one who tried to break me and my twin apart, I never laid a finger on her. I didn't brutally attack my twin either. I honestly could not believe that my family hated me so much that they were willing to make up a terrible lie about me and spread it around. My aunt told my grandpa the full truth about what happened, and just days later, he had told my parents and siblings that if they did not apologize for what they did to me and have me over for the family Christmas dinner, they would be cut off from his will. He's a multimillionaire, so they were willing to put their pride aside to get his money. Even after 8 years of being disowned, my parents have not learned to care about me and were just using me for money.
Doctors of Reddit, what's the biggest case of faking it you've ever seen? When I was a kid, I would plan my sick days way ahead of time. Had an old thermos that I would pour leftover milk, meat, whatever, leave it on the windowsill in my bedroom, just letting it fester for a month. Of course the thermos was closed so no smells escaped. I set an alarm for the middle of the night, dumped the contents of the thermos on my rug and ran in to tell my dad I was throwing up and so sick. However, this thermos monstrosity filled the entire condo up with horrible smells, and both me and my dad ended up puking into the tub at the same time every time we tried to clean up the rug. He had to take the day off work too. Needless to say, I never pulled that again. My mom was an emergency room nurse. Years ago they brought a prisoner from the local pen in who seemed to be unconscious. The guards were suspicious that he was faking it. They checked his vitals and everything seemed to be okay. The attending doctor tried poking him in the foot with something pointy. Nothing. Then he got an idea. They took a rubber hose and inserted it in the back of his throat as if they were intubating him. That did the trick. He sat up very quickly, coughing and gagging.
Final update: my fiancé wants a break after visiting my parents and going through some old photo albums. I want to clarify something that I didn't in my first post, and that is that I've practiced silks in college as well. He saw me practice there and had no issue with it, but only had an issue with my high school recital outfit, a unitard that went down to my knees. When I practice, I'm in yoga pants and a tee usually, but him comparing me to his sister was nothing new, but something he promised to stop doing years ago until the photo book made him break it. In the past, he'd compare privileges I grew up with to the ones she wasn't allowed to have and held it against me. Once when we went to a funeral at a church and said I was lucky to not have trauma stepping into one along with non-Christian music I listened to too. I told him to stop both times, and after the music thing, He promised and stopped for a few years until this. Since my last post, we've gone our separate ways. I told him that he needed to pick up his stuff or tell me what was happening, or I'd have a storage company hold his stuff, and he finally responded and sent me a text detailing what he and his brother spoke about, not even having the nerve to tell me over the phone. He said that he lied about being an atheist because he knew I wouldn't accept him otherwise. I never said that. I'm not religious myself, and that he was a Christian, but a better one than his mom. He also pointed to the outfits that other performers wore in the photo book recital as inappropriate because leotards are meant for sex and degrading things like that, even saying that gymnastics leads to bad thoughts and that I'd probably put our kids in there like every parent too. He said that the Larry Nassar stuff happened because the sport was sexual in nature, which is why purity was important, and that he was sad that I didn't see it that way and that he was done with me because of my values. He wanted his brother to help him get his things, but I told him that I didn't want him there because of how he hated me and his criminal record. He was in no contact with him until he seemingly broke it to stay with him. So, he had someone else come with him, and I had a friend there when they did too. We had been working to fully cancel everything for the wedding since, and we had even been in premarital counseling and talked about how he compared me to his sister in the past, but someone in the comments put it perfectly in my last post when they said something like, "It wasn't my fault for having a good upbringing and not feeling guilty about it because of his sister who I didn't know existed at the time, but he seemed to internalize it the entire time." I really appreciate the advice I received as I'm trying to move on, but the realization of realizing the internalization is hard, and how he lied about his promise to stop. Maybe I should have known that he never could have moved on. Deep Woods Hikers, what is the creepiest situation you have come across? It was strange that there was a man by himself this far out. It was downright terrifying that he was burying something. We basically lived in the woods during quarantine. We'd spend the days there, storm or shine, drinking beers, picking up trash, swimming, just goofing around. We also started doing something that sounds odd to say out loud but at the time kept us sane. We'd get to the woods, strip off our socks and shoes, and hike in silence to this small lagoon we'd lay out at. It was insanely meditative and I absolutely loved just barefoot wandering. It felt so satisfying in this primal sort of way. Anyway, the more we roamed like that, the more in tune we got with the woods around us. Without the chatter between us and the careless stomping of booted feet, we'd become part of the woods in this weird way. Probably helped that I was stoned out of my gourd half the time. It was like our guts started calling the shots. All the creatures seemed to stop minding us when we walked like that, so whenever the woods went silent we knew something was coming. It was one of those days, with thick skies and sort of electric air. It had been stormy for a few days and the woods were pretty empty. Darkness had started to creep in, quicker than usual. We were headed out of the woods, barefoot and knocking back the dregs of some warm beer, chatting a bit about nothing. I remember we were coming up this hill and all of a sudden the hair on the back of my neck was standing straight up, and I had goosebumps everywhere. I looked up at my friend and he was frozen mid-laugh. Something was wrong. The woods were off. We were surrounded by murky shadows and dead silence. Heavy silence. Tense silence. Then we heard it. It was this metallic sort of sound. A kind of clanging we couldn't really make out. Metal striking stone. Over and over. A bit further down the trail, squarely in between us and the way out. We stood like statues, tucked behind some trees, just listening. A shovel. Someone digging. We crept closer. I remember how the sound made my palms itch. My friend's face was flushed rose red. I told myself I was being stupid. In fact, I had in my backpack a little spade we used to plant flowers and dig up rocks and such. Who was I to judge this person? But then again, that was just a little garden spade. And as we got closer it became clear that this person had a full-on shovel and was digging in the middle of the woods. I kept trying to explain it to myself. Sure, it's odd to carry a big shovel this deep into the woods, but maybe they're burying a beloved pet. And sure, it makes no sense that they'd bury their pet in the middle of the trail, but maybe they're digging a bike jump. I went on and on like that, my mind churning out reasons, and still, the knots in my gut wouldn't loosen. We were almost on him now. With every step, my stomach hurt more. We were both shining in sweat. The sound of metal striking earth and stone seemed deafening. It was a primal sort of fear, rooted deep in our guts, completely deaf to every excuse I was handing it. My mind was racing. I was taking stock of everything. My friend was holding our bucket of rocks, though we'd pick skinny flat stones for skipping, not self-defense. I had a can of pepper spray buried somewhere in my bag, but, much to my mother's dismay I'd bet, couldn't easily access it. We got to the edge of a small clearing, and there we saw him. He was wearing a hat, scarf, and heavy clothes. All black, which was a bit odd for summer. But again, he might be in mourning for a sweet dog. But then I saw the black trash bag next to him. It was way too big to be a dog. We thought we were safe behind the bushes and that he couldn't see us. Then I got a text. In all my panic, I had forgotten to silence my phone. It was the default message sound, that high-pitched ding. Immediately the man's head snapped up and towards our direction. I met his gaze for only a split second, before he dropped the shovel and started sprinting at us. I turned to my friend and yelled, "Book IT." And we took off. Crashed down into the woods. Close to the water. We could jump in if he chased us. We sprinted, leaping over boulders, ducking under trees. Thorns and stones sticking into bare soles. I didn't feel them, didn't notice the blood on my feet, till we broke out of the tree line. We must have sprinted through the forest for like 15 straight minutes, right until we exited into a parking lot of a nearby ExxonMobil. We quickly ran inside, still barefoot, and stared out the window towards the woods. We waited another 20 minutes, but we saw no sign of him, And then I finally took a sigh of relief. I'll never know if he was burying a body, some treasure, or some trash, but I don't really care. I'm just glad we got out.
My ex-boyfriend broke up with me right after my family vacation and was engaged a month later. My ex-boyfriend and I met back in my freshman year of high school through mutual friends. After a few years of being close friends and having relationships in between, my ex-boyfriend asks me to go to senior prom with him. That begins the start of what I didn't know to become the worst year and a half of my life. He completely swept me off my feet during the first portion of our relationship, opened every door, gave gifts, flowers, jewelry, and amazing dates, and literally worshipped the ground that I walked on. We went on all of the senior trips and activities, prom, and of course, graduated together. I was the happiest I thought I'd ever been, with a glow and everything, because this was both of our first real relationships. At the end of the summer, we both lost our V-cards to one another. I was so excited for us to begin a new chapter together, but he had other things in mind. That completely changed him, but I wasn't really aware of it yet. Anytime I saw him, whether that be at a store, a restaurant, one of our houses, or simply a car ride, he just wanted to do one thing. And I couldn't tell my boyfriend no, of course, so I gave in every time, even if I didn't really want to, but I was just so happy to spend any sort of time with him. Slowly, he started to not ask me on dates, no birthday gift, a good one at least, we'll get to that later, and I didn't hear from him as often. I then started to become really sick every day and also not being able to see him that much either. I'm now aware that it was my body literally telling me to get away from him. I didn't see him from Halloween until Christmas because of how badly sick I was. He also just wouldn't make time to come over to see me. I was so depressed that I lost close to 30 pounds in 3 months. I couldn't eat anything, or else I would immediately be sick. I was literally fired from my job for being sick. After the new year, I made him promise to come over at least once a week after his class. He came over probably 5 times in the whole semester, 2 of the days being Valentine's Day and our anniversary. I didn't get a single gift and was hit with the damn. I was going to stop and get you flowers, but I forgot, while I spent hundreds on him for every holiday. I was still delusional and just happy to see him for even a second, so I didn't mind a bit. I spent the night with him over at his sister's house. We slept on the couch together in the living room with his brother, who was on the couch right next to us. While I was sleeping, I woke up to the sound of him unzipping his pants. He put my hand on, and then I saw a flash. He took a picture of that while I was sleeping, and I never told him I knew. Fast forward a few months, I finally had enough of him for not treating me the way I deserved, so I talked to him about it. It went great. He apologized and promised to treat me like he did at the beginning. How long do you think that lasted? A few months pass, we're preparing for my family vacation, which we were both very excited for. A full week together, I thought this was going to change everything. We start our 9-hour road trip, already having so much fun together, get to my family's house, and start our week of vacation. All of the boys went golfing. I paid over $300 for him to play golf. The rest of the trip was amazing. We spent so much quality time together. I felt we were both the happiest and, honestly, at the peak of our relationship. We return home a week later, and he drops me off. We say our normal goodbyes with plans to see each other next week. 4 days later, it was a normal day. He had just gotten home from work, and I was asking him about his day. He then asks if he can come over. Obviously, I say yes without a thought in my head. He sits me down in my room and says, "I don't think this is going to work anymore. Our schedules just don't line up." I'm just sitting there, absolutely shocked that those words just came out of his mouth. Because here I am, without a job and not really much of a schedule to begin with. We had just talked about making our relationship better and spent a full week with my family. I couldn't say any words. I was just violently sobbing into his arms. After a few seconds, he puts his wrist up to look at his watch and says, "Well, I've got to get home. I've got work tomorrow." It was 6 p.m. That was the last time I'd ever spoken to or seen him. Immediately after he left, I was unadded, blocked, and unfriended. All pictures of me or us together were taken down, basically completely erased from his life within a 5-minute interaction. My life had just been taken away from me, and I was a total wreck. He went on that trip knowing he was going to break up with me. His words actually. So he spent 9 hours in the car, a full week with my family, enjoying all the free activities and everything, sleeping with me multiple times, and 9 hours on the way back home thinking about breaking up with me. Absolutely sick and twisted. After a few weeks, I was completely healthy. I hadn't gotten sick in weeks and actually glowing, and I started to feel more like myself than ever before. I realized all of the red flags that I was blinded to. I finally told my friends what he got me for my birthday the year before. He got me a naughty toy. But wait, it gets better. Also, a necklace with his particular fluids. Ain't it? No card. All I can do is laugh about it now. I also have a passionate hatred for the sport of golf. If he could marry Tiger Woods, I think he would in a heartbeat. He worked at a golf course, worked every day, played at least 9 holes a day, and was at the driving range after every meal. He missed my grandmother's funeral for an exam that I later found out got cancelled, and he said he decided to go to the course instead. He missed a lot of other important things with and for me for a golf ball. He genuinely would come up with any excuse to get out of something with me, whether that be, "I have to ask my mom," at 19 years old, or my favorite, sorry, I have to play COD. That last one was used when my dad and grandparents were visiting, and they invited him to dinner. Don't even get me started on I have to clean my guns. There were so many other things, but this is already too long. About a month ago, my friends found out he already had a girlfriend. It didn't bother me because, honestly, it was just so comical to me that he couldn't go that long without getting some. Now, last week, we found out that he got engaged, a little over a month after breaking up with me. That stung a bit, but I couldn't help but laugh. I still haven't gotten an answer as to why he broke up with me. Now, I think I know why. I have been living my life, never better. I have the best friends and people in my life for whom I couldn't be more grateful and appreciative of. Thankful to my body for trying to tell me it was rejecting him. Sorry for not listening. I've been on so many adventures, going to new places, meeting new people, and having the absolute privilege to say that my ex-boyfriend turned me gay. I'll never be able to be with a guy again after that monstrosity that some people somehow call a human being.
What do the rich buy that the poor don't even know about? My friend is a personal assistant for this multi-billionaire and he tells me how things are just wildly different for them. The specific example he used was how things work when these people want to go on a trip, and give any notice at all to their employees. What happens is that an advance team gets sent ahead by a few days to scope out the rented/bought location and report back exact dimensions for closet space, drawer space, etc. People back at the home go through the clothing, jewelry, etc., and draw up a priority list which is sent to the advance team. The advance team then spends the next 2 days purchasing the list of items, entire wardrobes, jewelry sets, makeup kits, bathing supplies, etc. Anything they cannot get, not enough time, or is one of a kind like the family heirloom watch the rich dude wears every now and then, is relayed to the house team. The family schedule is arranged such that the moment the family leaves the house on the day of travel, a whole team of people rushes through and packs up all the remaining items. Only after the family leaves, you wouldn't want to deny them access to their items for even a few seconds, which are then sent ahead to the airport while the family has a lunch or something somewhere. Upon landing, their luggage takes one route, direct, and the family takes a similarly indirect route, unless otherwise directed, such that by the time they get to the location all of their items are not just unpacked but in their proper organized locations and ready for use without any of the advance team ever being visible to the family. What happens when the family leaves the location? The same situation in reverse, but quite frequently all of the repurchased items are just disposed of in some method. It's just easier, if not cheaper, to rebuy them each time the family goes somewhere if they aren't traveling to too many different locations in quick succession. My mother-in-law ruined my wedding, so I ruined her life. My mother-in-law is a psychotic beach. I have been dating my fiancé for about 4 years and have only been with his mother a handful of times because we live in LA and she lives in Boston. The first time I met her, she asked me how many people I had slept with before her son, how much money I make, and she even threatened me if I ever hurt her son. During the whole wedding planning ordeal, she called multiple times a day to make sure everything was being done the way she saw fit. I brought up to my fiancé how much this bothered me, but he shrugged it off, saying that's just how she is. But on the day of our wedding, she took it way too far. Everything was going perfectly until the ceremony started. As I started to walk down the aisle, it was the happiest moment of my life. Everybody was smiling and every person I loved was there to celebrate my big day. I turned my gaze toward my beautiful husband-to-be, and my jaw dropped. There she was, my future mother-in-law, standing with the bridesmaids, wearing the same dress as them. She had made herself a bridesmaid. What happened next was effed. I stole over $20,000 in a very creative way in the 90s. I worked at a fast food chain in the 90s when I was in high school. When I worked there they were in the process of phasing out denominational gift certificates. $5, $10, $25. The way it worked was if you spent more than half of the certificate they gave you the cash back. So if you ordered $5.50 worth of food and gave them one of the $10 gift cards, they gave you the $4.50 back in cash. My manager was in charge of destroying all the existing certificates as we transitioned to the more traditional credit card looking gift cards. So my manager said he shredded the certificates like he was supposed to, but one night when I was closing I found 2 boxes of the gift cards tucked deep in the dry storage room. They were filled with the certificates that were supposed to be shredded. So, I scooped them up, brought them out to the dumpster in trash bags and threw them away. After we closed, I came back and recovered the back, and brought the certificates home. I counted them. There were $1,025, $1,010, and $505 certificates. None of them had expiration dates. Total haul was $40,000 in fast food certificates. My manager never said a word, he couldn't. He had reported them destroyed weeks earlier. Over the next 3 years my girlfriend and I toured every location in our state, and the next 4 states ordering food, and getting the change. We never kept track on a spreadsheet or anything, but we got good at knowing what menu items were just about half. After the first year, we started saving the change in a shoe box, and let it build up. I bought my first car for $7,800 cash from the change. And for some reason a kitty cone was $1.05, if you gave them a $5 cert they gave you $3.95 back. We threw away a lot of kitty cones. When did you realize that something was off with your kid? My young son was friends with a 50-something guy named Ted who lived alone next door. They were real friends. Ted gave him a spark plug wrench and let him take the spark plugs out of all the cars in his junkyard. He also let my son drive his 1950 pink Cadillac sitting on blocks in a place of honor in the junkyard. He talked to my son about serious things like how to be a good man, why you should wash your hands a lot, the importance of having a place for your tools and putting them where they belonged. My son lacked a father and this neighbor lacked any family at all, so it worked out quite well. But then Ted got cancer and was going to die. He let my son know it was nothing personal and he had done nothing wrong to deserve it. He also said he was going to have to leave forever, die, and he would go to heaven. They talked a lot about whether he was afraid and what would happen when he died. He told my son he didn't want anybody messing with his body and he wanted to be buried, not embalmed, and still be intact. He wanted to go back to the earth in dignity and not be a poisoned pickle in the ground. Unfortunately, he passed away just before Thanksgiving, and without a family, there was no one who felt obligated to see to his wishes. In our state, you can only be buried, without embalming, if you are buried within 3 days. The ground was frozen and it was a holiday weekend. No grave diggers could be found, so the adults discussed this in the social room. After church, they concluded that Ted, whom we had all known and valued, would have to be embalmed. My son, who was about 6, overheard this and became outraged. He pestered one man after another about it. He eloquently argued how sad Ted would be about being a poisoned pickle in the ground. My son announced he would go dig the hole himself even if he did not get home in time for pie. He managed to guilt a dozen men, in their best clothing, to go to the graveyard and dig a grave. Also, a Catholic priest would be doing the services for a Protestant before anyone went home to eat a turkey. It was technically wrong because he interrupted and pestered adults with great determination. One by one, he effectively made them do something that was outside his purview as a child. I didn't stop him from doing it. I was more than proud of his love and care for his deceased friend. But it was definitely a sign that our child was a little different from others. My neighbor trespassed on my property, so I made his life a living hell. I rent a house with my husband and 2 of our friends. It's a 5-bedroom house. Rent is outrageous in our area, $2,400 for a 1-bedroom apartment. So we found this house for $3,000, not a bad deal while we saved up to buy a house. There are other houses in the neighborhood like this as well, and our next door neighbor's house is a 5-bedroom house. They have 9 people living in their house. So it is chaos over there all the time. In our neighborhood we can choose the trash company, so it just so happens that we have the same trash company as the next door neighbors. Our trash company does like us to have the trash out by 7 a.m., but we don't always get it out that early though, and that's where this problem started. Most of the time they don't pick up our trash until 11 a.m., so obviously, as long as the trash is out before trash pickup gets here, they can take our trash. The people next door have 3 trash cans, and they are overflowing every single week. They put their trash out the night before, but unfortunately our neighborhood has raccoons and foxes that are always getting into the trash, and last time a raccoon got into their trash, it left a mess in our yard and they wouldn't pick it up. I was pretty pissed about it, but I just let it go and cleaned up their trash. I did go and put it back in their trash can and they just sat out front glaring at me while I did that. Here is where this incident started. A couple weeks ago, I didn't get our trash out until almost 9 a.m. All 4 of us were sick with COVID. I was on the mend and feeling a little bit better, but I slept in and forgot to put out the trash at 7 a.m. So I go to put the trash out and my neighbor starts yelling at me saying, "You were supposed to have your trash out by 7 a.m. You can't put your trash out now." I said, "Well, they haven't come and pick up the trash because your trash cans are full, so it's not a big deal." He said, "No, that's the rules. Your trash has to be out by 7 a.m. If it's not, you can't get your trash picked up this week." I said I understand that they want the trash out by 7 a.m., but they haven't come and picked it up yet, so it doesn't matter. So I went ahead and I just walked inside. I went back to bed and a couple hours later I get up to see that our trash can was put to the side of the house and they were still full of trash. So that means that someone moved our trash can. Our other neighbor came up to me the next day and said that she saw him put our trash can back. She didn't know the situation, so she wasn't going to butt in and tell him to not do that. Our neighbors are also very proud about their last name. They literally have a flag in their front window with their last name, so I called the trash company and I said that I was Mrs. So-and-so and I needed to set up a vacation hold for our upcoming pickup. They said no problem, we won't pick up your trash next week. They legit only asked for the address, no other information. The next week I made sure that our trash was out at 6:45 a.m. Then I sat and I watched for the trash truck and I watched them come past the house. They drove past my neighbor's house, didn't pick up their trash, even though their trash was overflowing, picked up ours and the other few people who also have them and left. I know I'm an a-hole for doing this, you don't need to tell me. But he crossed the line by touching our cans and moving them and setting foot on our property. My wife cheated on me, and when I confronted her she laughed at me. I cheated on my wife, 38, 41, 4 years ago. I regret it to this day and I have never done anything since. We have 2 small children and when she found out she moved out. Life was hard on the both of us and we were miserable. I love my wife more than anything and losing her was excruciating. After a few months apart I begged her to come back and we took it slow, going to therapy and just trying to build our life together back up. She moved back after a year and everything was back to normal again. We were even stronger and our relationship grew. We are very happy together. I finally thought our life was perfect again. About a week ago, a man showed up at my door and when I opened he was confused then apologized for mixing the days up. I was supposed to fly home with my children the next day. My wife took over and then she went back to the guy's car and they talked for 5 minutes and he drove away. I asked her who he was and she said he was just a friend. He came to pick her up since I was supposed to be at my parents' but he mixed the days. I was shocked, so I asked her if she was sleeping with him. She was so unbelievably unbothered, looked at me for a moment and said yes. I was speechless. "Are you sleeping with others?" She said, "Yes." "Since when?" Since we got back together, she was calm the whole time, talking about it like it was normal. She asked me why it was okay for me and not for her, and when I said that I never as much as looked at another woman since I cheated, she was surprised at first, then she laughed at me. She said she just assumed that I did, so she thought if I could then so could she. I cancelled my trip to stay with her at home, but she said that she was sorry. She already made the plans. I got very upset and started yelling at her. She said that if I didn't like it, maybe we aren't supposed to be together. Then she said, if you start yelling again, I want a divorce. Teachers of Reddit, what's the most psychotic answer you've been given? Not a teacher, yet I did have an affinity for creative rhetoric as a student, and it was never more evident than when the time came for us to apply for college scholarships. The high school where I attended my junior and senior years was progressive in a number of ways, the most notable of those being that everything, with very few exceptions, was done on computers. There was also a significant focus on college applications and essays, and a member of the faculty devoted entirely to helping our 80-something graduating students with the admissions process. One aspect of this woman's job was to assist in finding scholarships for which each of us would be eligible. And apparently, she felt that I should apply for the one entitled Overcoming Adversity.
Now, while I did later discover that everyone had been sent that particular scholarship, I took special note of it because I, a white male from an upper-middle-class family full of folks with doctorate degrees, wasn't eligible for anything else.
And besides, the only requirement was a 3-paragraph essay. So, more in an effort to amuse myself than to actually accomplish something, I decided to write what I hoped would be a heartfelt and seemingly earnest description of the hardships that I'd experienced. There was only one problem: I'd never had any such hardships. Oh, sure, there had been some tough times and scary situations, but nothing, by that point, beyond almost dying during an ill-advised caving expedition, which I didn't think would qualify. In fact, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I'd never even had the opportunity to overcome adversity. Just like that, it hit me. Less than half an hour later, I'd crafted my essay. The title, perhaps appropriately, was Overcoming a Lack of Adversity. In it, I described how I'd never had the privilege of being underprivileged, and how I'd been deprived of the chance to rise above my limitations as a result. I further explained that if I was given the scholarship, it would count not only as someone recognizing my handicap, but also as giving me the chance to conquer it. A couple of months later, my principal rolled his eyes as he announced me as the recipient of the scholarship in question. Evidently, I was the only one who had applied. Kick me out for playing video games? You'll never watch adult films again. When I was 17 years old, I would mostly just play World of Warcraft and do the bare minimum in high school. During my senior year, I had over 20 absences, most of which involved me skipping to play video games. I lived in a rural farmhouse, so the internet was expensive and unreliable. This was back in 2008. We were poor and didn't have internet, but my neighbor did, and unbeknownst to my dad and stepmom, I set up a wireless extender with said neighbor's permission so that I could do homework. It just barely reached my bedroom and the back deck. I'd play games in my room on the internet all the time, and my parents didn't even realize I had access to the internet. They just figured that World of Warcraft was another non-internet game, and I didn't enlighten them. As I got close to graduation, I did some self-reflection and decided to give video games up. I had given them up for an entire week and was so proud of myself that I decided to open up to my father and tell him about my progress. I told him that I had had the internet for over 6 months and that it reached my bedroom. I didn't mention the extender. My dad was not pleased that I had been playing this many games under his nose. Up until then, he was a fairly absentee parent, but then he wanted to lay down the law and he demanded to take permanent possession of my laptop so he could sell it and presumably cut me off from any future gaming. This felt unfair to me because the laptop was a gift from my grandmother and I couldn't afford to replace it. He also wanted to drive me to and from school, where I previously had a lot more freedom on a bike. I was almost 18 years old and I felt like I had taken care of my own problem and didn't need this. I didn't give my dad the laptop. I had hidden it in one of my dad's broken down cars. When it became clear I wouldn't surrender my laptop, my dad didn't take it well and he beat me up. Not a great memory. I moved out to my friend's house a few farms over to finish high school. His parents were super supportive, but I wasn't welcome back at my dad's house. On one occasion, when I saw my dad and stepmom's car gone, I snuck into the house to get my things. My stepmom had already packed up my room into neat boxes. Weirdly, I noticed that my dad's entire computer setup was on the house's back porch. He was using the internet. No doubt for watching adult films behind my stepmom's back. On my way out, I walked to the edge of the property where the wireless extender was and I took it with me. He didn't even know about it anyway. When I finally did talk to my dad 8 months later, he asked if I knew how to fix the internet. I should have broken up with my girlfriend sooner. Now, I'm left with nothing. I, 24 male, had been with my now ex, 25 female, for exactly a year. She broke up with me on our anniversary. We have had our ups and downs, as every relationship, but some were a little more fierce than others. She's a recovering addict that comes from a very shady and abusive background and relationship, and I come from a lot of pessimism from my home life, and very toxic relationships in the past. I'll be honest, when I pulled her I was very insecure, and it started to show. My self-depreciation would leak out and I'd get scared that she would leave me, because I was nervous that I wasn't doing enough for her, but she would reassure me that I was enough and I actually do more than enough. I would always give it 110%. I'd cook, clean, spoil her when I could, reaffirm her, go on adventures with her, everything. I gave up my home life and sacrificed my savings to even sign a lease with her and share an apartment with her. But I guess it's true what they say, you don't truly know someone until you live with them. Granted, you could say that moving in without even knowing each other for a year is a little too quick, and in hindsight, I agree with you, but it was a surefire way I knew I was going to have a roof over my head, and I'd be with my favorite person. For subcontext, I'm glad I did bite the bullet and get a place with her because shortly after, my parents got evicted, so this actually worked out. Also, my parents are terrible people and made my life miserable, so I did everything I could to try to get out of there. Things were going well when we first moved in. That 3-month love bug period or whatever. We were buying things to fill the space up. I had my own office and gaming lounge. We shared a nice big bedroom. It was great. But then the lack of trust came in. I learned that she was checking my phone when I was sleeping, trying to find any inclination of me cheating on her. Of course there was none of that, because I love her very much, and I did everything I could to be a healthy relationship for her and show her that I want her to heal and move on from her past traumas. She wanted me to get rid of all of my female friends because she didn't trust me. I obliged, apologized, and moved on from it. It was a little worrying because my exes did the same thing. Granted, there was never anything there between any of the women I was friends with. Some I was very close with. I hope they're doing well. I don't know. The thing that bothered me the most was that she was hypocritical about it. Because she works a job where she is close and personal with her clients, a lot of them are male, which are far more rich and successful than I am. I come to learn that she actually has some of her male clients following her private social media and they have her personal phone number. This is when the arguments and the lack of trust on both sides began. We were both slowly crumbling the relationship, over things that were just speculation, or anxiety, created in our head, trying to defend ourselves from getting hurt. I should add some context as well. I'm a very lonely person. Besides her, I have one, maybe two good friends, and I am a person who strives for interaction. So, when I started a new job, a person who approached me, who just so happened to be female, started talking to me, and we had similar interests, so we took each other's Snapchats down. I don't know why we still use Snapchat. I just felt as if it'd be weirder on my end for a phone number. Also, for the record, this person would save all of the chats to have a log of all conversations, and they saved everything, even photos. This is important for a little bit later. I come home excited that I've made a new friend, and I talk a little bit about her. Time goes on, we get into little heated arguments about absolute nonsense. I can feel the relationship crashing down. A couple of weeks ago, she woke me up and asked me if I have a place to stay for the week. I was super confused, and asked why, and she opened my phone and showed me my conversation with my female friend. Which I was even more confused about, considering all the chats and snaps in the conversation were saved. I was starstruck, and when I get confused or frustrated, I tend to raise my voice a little, not yell, but just become a little louder because I was trying to explain that there is literally nothing there and I have no interest in this person whatsoever other than our shared interests. We get into a very big argument that night, and another mess up I did was call her crazy. She didn't like that. Not one bit. Get the reference? Tension in the apartment had been very high, and we seemed to have just tolerated each other and go on about our lives, but that fight, it stuck with me. I went to my journal to write. I wrote a draft of a breakup letter. It was 13 pages, and if I felt like I've had enough, I was going to sit her down and have a talk, and whatever I couldn't get out in person, the letter had everything I could possibly want to say. It's very important to note that I didn't give her this letter, and it was in my personal journal, which I have a lot of personal angry, depressive passages in there, because writing helps me and it's also for my eyes only. Or so I thought. We have our moments where things are really good, and then we'll shut each other out. Well, for the last couple of days, she's been shutting me out. She would barely speak to me, and that's rough considering we sleep in the same bed. I kept asking her what was wrong and if she wanted to talk about it, but she just kept saying that it was work and she was tired. Yesterday, she didn't text me all day. So I finally bit the bullet. I asked her if she's breaking up with me, and she said yes. She went through my journal and found my letter. She said that's the nail in the coffin. She has already found someone to take my spot in the apartment, and I have to move all my stuff out today, by myself. We also just recently adopted 2 cats, which I'm going to miss so much. I thought she was the one. I thought that if I tried hard enough and stuck through the suck, we were going to make it through the long haul. I don't have any money. I'm spending my paycheck on a U-Haul and packing supplies to get my stuff out, and I'm going to stay at my sister's for a bit, but that's not permanent. I don't make enough money to live on my own, and I don't know or have anyone who I'd be willing to trust and live with in an apartment together. So yeah, that's where I'm at. There's a lot of stuff I didn't put in because it's early and I'm tired, so if this blows up I'll try and reply whenever I have time. My girlfriend pretended to buy us a house. A relationship scam? I'm a 34-year-old man, and I started dating my girlfriend, who is 28, in late February. Everything seemed great between us, although she had insecurities and frequently expressed her fears of abandonment. Despite her doubts, we fell in love with each other. The only issue was the distance. She lived 50 miles away. I mentioned to her several times that I didn't think a long-distance relationship would work in the long run, considering the challenges it brought and our different preferences for city or small-town living. We couldn't move in together because she lived in a small town, and I wanted to stay in the city. That's when she proposed buying a house nearby so we could live together. Now, here's an important detail. She claimed to have inherited $5.5 million from her grandfather, but I had never seen any proof of this inheritance. I suggested she invest some of the money in stocks, but she never showed me any bank statements or allowed me to help open a brokerage account. In mid-April, she found a house that she showed me photos of, and she placed a bid on it without my presence. She later informed me that her bid was approved, and the sale was pending. However, after that, she didn't mention the house much, and there was a lack of excitement on her part. She said she would close on the house and get the keys on May 31st but didn't invite me to the closing. She did drive me by the house before the closing, though. Around that time, She developed severe neurological issues, later diagnosed as lupus, and her health became a major concern. The house became less of a priority for both of us. Eventually, she asked me to pick out home gym equipment, which she planned to have shipped directly to the new house. By late July, her health had improved significantly, and I brought up the topic of helping her pack and sort her belongings for the move. However, she would either postpone it or defensively mention the messiness of her home during her illness. In early August, I started persistently pushing her to let me help with the move, but she resisted, fearing she would burden me. She relied on her cousin, who continually flaked on her due to his own renovations. Frustrated, I joked that I felt like I was being catfished. Although she was upset, we talked, and she set September 1st as the move-in date. But on September 1st, she realized she couldn't move her kids out of school as planned, and we agreed to wait until Thanksgiving break. At this point, I was becoming increasingly frustrated, and I broke up with her because of the strain our relationship was under due to the distance and the delayed move. The day before our breakup, I asked her for the address of the new house, and she reluctantly shared it but hung up on me afterward, claiming that I only cared about the house. This led me to search for the truth myself. I found the address through pictures she had sent me, and upon researching, I discovered that the house hadn't been sold until September 5th. I also contacted the real estate agent involved, who confirmed that the owner didn't move out until mid-August and that the new owner didn't match my girlfriend's description. When I confronted her about the discrepancy, she became defensive and repeatedly questioned why I was acting that way. She refused to provide any evidence or open the front door of the house. After a heated conversation, I hung up on her, and she called me multiple times before eventually going silent. I'm devastated and shocked by what happened. I truly loved her and envisioned a future together, even with her children. It feels like everything was an illusion, and I'm struggling to come to terms with it. Have you ever caught someone in the action of stealing packages off your doorstep? I used to be an Amazon Flex driver on the weekends to make some extra money. The base pay was $18 an hour, and if I did my deliveries quickly, I was making more than $25 an hour. They have a program where you sign up to be an independent contractor and get paid for delivering a certain number of packages in a prescribed amount of time. It was a lot of fun even though you have to basically fight other people online to get a run. One day I was out making deliveries and I noticed a car pull over at a house where I had just dropped off a package. I thought to myself that it must be the homeowner and stopped to deliver the next. But I kept an eye on the car and sure enough, they were following me and grabbing my packages. I called the police and kept on delivering. Within 5 minutes, a police car pulled them over, and as soon as I saw that they had them stopped, I turned around and went to speak with the officers. Come to find out that they had followed me out of the station and began taking my packages from the start. I looked in their car, and they had grabbed 9 of my packages. Had I not called the police, who knows how many more they would have gotten. They were arrested on the spot and taken away in handcuffs. I was incredibly angry, because not only had they stolen my packages, but now I had to go back and deliver them all again. It screwed up what should have been a very simple day, but I was thrilled to know that these porch pirates got what was coming to them. Am I the a-hole for telling my liberal colleague that not everyone has to make an effort to not trigger her? I, 25F, work with Rosa, early 20s, F, we get on well enough at work, but I do not enjoy spending a lot of time with her for various reasons. For context, I used to be severely obese, to the point where even getting up and walking short distances was painful. I have lost a lot of weight and am very proud of myself, having attended a weight loss group for over a year, but I don't bring it up in conversation unless someone else mentions it first. Rosa told me when we first met that she had overcome an eating disorder, anorexia. I congratulated her and said that she is very strong and I am happy for her. Nothing more was said after that. One morning at work, I took a pen out of my pocket so I could tick some things off a list. My pen happened to have the logo of the weight loss group I joined on it. I think I took it home from one of our meetings. Rosa saw the pen and asked, "Do you go to that club?" To which I replied, "Yes, it's helped me have a healthier mindset about food." Rosa looked upset, almost angry, and said, "Can you use a different pen?" Seeing things about weight loss really triggers me. I just kind of looked at her like, "Are you serious?" I also didn't have another pen in my pocket. I tried to be sensitive to her past, but was also a bit irritated, so I said, "I understand, but you are bound to come across things that trigger you in the real world. It's literally just a pen with a logo on it. You can't expect everyone to make a conscious effort to avoid triggering you. Life doesn't work like that." Rosa looked really annoyed at this point and stormed off. I don't know where she went, if she went to report me to management. My mother-in-law doesn't let my husband pound my kitty cat. My husband and I got married a year ago. He and I didn't live together before. In fact, we hardly saw each other because we both worked and studied at the same time, so our time was quite limited. We got married and went to live together in his apartment. Unfortunately, 2 months after our wedding, his father died in an accident. My mother-in-law and my husband, who is an only child, were devastated as it was quite sudden. My mother-in-law, left alone, began to suggest to my husband that we move with her to her house to keep her company, but because she is from another state we couldn't due to our jobs and college. Then she came to us. Our apartment is 2 rooms, so my mother-in-law occupied one and my husband and I occupied another. I mean, my mother-in-law never liked me. She is one of the mothers who think that no woman is good enough for her son. As a couple who are still in the honeymoon stage, we had intimacy very frequently. Every day, even up to twice a day. This changed when my mother-in-law arrived, since the apartment is small, so I didn't feel comfortable doing it with her living there. The thing is that when we did have intimacy with my husband, my mother-in-law magically interrupted us. It didn't matter what time it was, even if it was 3 a.m. she casually got up and knocked on our door asking, "What are we doing?" Or telling my husband that she feels bad because her head hurts or things like that. This has been going on since my mother-in-law moved in with us. It's been a stressful 7 months. Besides, I have no privacy of any kind. She criticizes everything I do, especially my food. My husband tries to give me my place, saying things like, "It's not true, Mom, the food tastes good." What really annoyed me was the fact that she started saying that several things of value and money were lost in her room casually the day I stayed at home. I had the day off from work and study in the afternoons. I really got fed up. I told my husband that this really wasn't what I expected. I agreed to let her move in with us because my father-in-law passed away and I was really trying to be empathetic to her and her pain, but I'm not going to let her call me a thief. Now I'm at my parents' house. My husband keeps calling me and sending me messages to come back, but I don't know what to do anymore. This is really stressful. Girlfriend wants me to choose between her and my sister. A little while ago, when my folks were coming back from my uncle's place outside town, they came across a big moose on a quiet road in the woods. My dad, who was driving, had to swerve quickly and ended up hitting a tree. They didn't make it through, sadly. Since the road wasn't used much, it took until the next day for someone to find them. My sister's been staying with my grandma, even though she's not my favorite person. She used to get pretty mad at me when we were younger. Sometimes I deserved it, sometimes not. Grandma said she couldn't take care of my sister permanently, so I said I would. We're super close, and she's family, so I love her no matter what. Now my sister is living with me and my girlfriend for about 2 weeks. She's still really shaken up about what happened to our parents. We were both really close to them, and they were awesome. She doesn't talk much, except to me and sometimes my girlfriend. We take her to see a therapist twice a week, and she's getting better, even though it's only been a short time. Yesterday, after I stayed with my sister until she fell asleep, I went to talk with my girlfriend. She mentioned that we haven't been spending much time together since my sister moved in. That's a valid point. We've only been intimate once, and that was when my sister wasn't around. Honestly, I wasn't even into it then. My girlfriend suggested that maybe I should think about giving my sister to my uncle and aunt. I said no, they're already really busy. My uncle can't work because of his heart, and my aunt doesn't make a lot working at a retirement home. They're also paying for my cousin's college and taking care of my little cousin, who's only 5. My girlfriend's almost done with college, but money's tight for us too. I have a job in my field that pays decently, but things have been tight. Luckily, I'll start getting support from the government for adopting my sister. My girlfriend said she's not ready to be a mom and deal with all these responsibilities. I get that, it's a lot. She said it's putting a strain on our relationship, which makes sense. Before, we'd finish our work or school and have the rest of the day to ourselves. But now, we're picking up my sister from school, driving her to therapy, and taking care of her when she's home because she doesn't like being alone. I told her that while her points were good, it didn't change the fact that my sister is family. I can't just give up on her because it's tough. I know it's going to be hard, but I'm committed. Maybe I didn't say it the best way because she got really upset. She asked me to pick between her and my sister, and I didn't answer. We ended up arguing, and I slept on the couch. I guess everything just got to me, you know? I want to mention that my girlfriend and I have been together for a long time, 9 years. She knew my parents, and they really liked her. She's known my sister since she was born. I just don't get how she could make me choose between them. I love them both, and I don't want to lose either. My wife keeps throwing divorce in my face over everything. I just agreed and left. I am currently staying with my sister. My wife and I have been together for 5 years, married for 4. We had known each other for years prior. We have 1 kid together who is 4. I am the primary breadwinner in the house as she is a stay-at-home mother. It was her choice not to go back to work. For the last year and a half, we have been having arguments about 1 to 2 times a month. To be clear, I do help out with our daughter. I clean, cook, and am involved with both of them. The first time she said she wanted a divorce was when we got into an argument when my sister called and asked if she could stay with us for a bit as she was having relationship problems. Ironic, I said she could. My wife was not happy about that. I pointed out that her friend stayed with us a couple of months prior for 5 weeks and didn't do anything around the house. Plus she was just there. No discussion, no nothing. She was a stranger to me and my daughter. My sister is lovely and has a great relationship with our daughter, and I thought my wife was as well. She ended up staying with us for a week, helping out around the house, cooking, cleaning, and watching out daughter when needed. I thought we both forgave each other and moved on. The fights are usually over something small. 90% are not started by me. I have suggested therapy and counseling, but she always said we never needed it. Well, I had it last night. She picked a fight saying I was spending too much time at work, and that she feels abandoned and that I'm not a good father. Ended her rant with I want a divorce. I stood up and told her that the only reason I work so much is because she can't stop spending our money on things we don't need or use. She refused to get a job or go to school to help her out. I provide for the family. For my daughter, I'm always at her important dates, functions, doctor's appointments, anything she needs. She refused to get help through therapy or counseling. I don't want this anymore. I'll have my lawyer send her the papers when she writes it up. I got my daughter's things and left with her to my sister's. It has been 2 days and she keeps calling and texting saying she is sorry. She didn't mean it. She wants to go to counseling and therapy. She needs me. She misses me, etc. I don't know what to do. I love her. She is a good mother, but I can't do this anymore. Internet strangers, please help. What's your psycho ex story? He stole my prescription medication and refused to give it back until I got back together with him. I told my older brother, who convinced him to stop. He harassed me at work for over an hour. He knew there were no other employees in the store. He called my cell endlessly until I blocked him. Then he started calling my job's phone. threatened to come in and cause a scene to get me fired once a manager arrived if I didn't speak to him. I had no way of blocking him, and if I didn't answer the phone the computer would log a missed call. So after the 30th call or so I just kept picking it up and hanging it up straight away rather than talking to him. Was too scared to call the cops. I told my older brother and he convinced the ex to stop. He threatened to take his life if I didn't get back together with him. I asked if he was serious. He said yes. So I finally worked up the courage to call the police on him. They took him to the hospital. He was there for 3 hours. They decided it was a panic attack, released him, and the harassment continued as soon as he was out. He did all that in one day. He endlessly harassed my friends, lied to them, would message them in the middle of the night, send them hundreds of messages a day. He threatened me, if I ever see you with anyone else you won't be so pretty anymore, and the guy is gonna regret talking to you. He talked crap about me to anyone that would listen, lie about why we broke up, called me names, anything he could think of. Did the same on social media. I told my grandma and she had him delete the posts. He called me once he found out I made a Tinder, by seeing me on his own Tinder, used his friend's phone to call me and was literally screaming at me. He ended up punching a hole in his wall. One night he announced he was coming over to my place. He knew my dad's work schedule and knew I would be home alone. Luckily I was staying over a friend's house that night. I had to call him and tell him to leave me alone. A few days later, he again, knowing my dad's work schedule, knew I would be home alone. And I was. Unfortunately, he announced he was on his way over, that we were going to talk it out and do what it takes to get back together. With all his previous behavior, this terrified me. I started having a severe panic attack, worst one I've ever had. I told him to leave me alone. I didn't want to talk to him. We weren't getting back together. He said he didn't care, was coming over anyway. Even when I was crying hysterically, barely able to breathe from my panic attack, he insisted that since he has my favorite food, I'll be fine. I got in my car and bolted. Sat in a grocery store parking lot cause I was so scared he'd find me if I went to a friend's or a relative's. I called my mom. Once I calmed down enough, I went to a police station and got a temporary restraining order. In court, the judge decided I didn't qualify for a permanent restraining order, because, even though he admitted to all his behavior, and it qualified legally as domestic violence on multiple levels, the lack of physical violence means I don't qualify for a permanent restraining order. So essentially he needs to hurt me before I can prevent him from hurting me. 3 days after court he messaged me again. He's made fake Facebook accounts, messaged me on absolutely every platform he could think of. Am I the a-hole for letting my friend's wife blow me? I had been friends with this guy since elementary school, but he got a job in Texas and I haven't seen him in 8 years. I bump into him one day just randomly at the gas station. We had a chat and he opened up about struggling with depression and how he thought his wife was cheating on him as she went out drinking a lot. We sent a few texts back and forth in the days afterwards. That weekend I went to my job as a bouncer in the local town. I was on my own door as it was a quiet bar and the owner was an ex-boxer and gypsy, so would always back me up when anything happened. He was far scarier than me, to be honest. So anyway, this woman and her friends come in and she's all over me from the minute she's in there. She asks me to come to the bathroom with her, but I refuse as I can't leave the door unattended. We exchange numbers and I don't think much of it. Bouncers get hit on every night. When the club shuts, she's still in there and waits outside for me. I go out, we go back to my car and she starts blowing me. A few minutes in, and her phone goes off. She answers. She lies to the person on the phone saying she's at a friend's and will be home soon. Instant alarm bells start going off. She hasn't even stopped, she's still going while waiting for the reply. She hangs up and looks at me and says, "Sorry, that's just my husband." I was shocked, and then I noticed the ring and felt like an asshole. But I was already past the point of no return. I came, she swallowed and she left to get a taxi home. I offered to drive her but she refused. A couple of days later I get a friend request on Facebook from my old friend. I add him and click on his profile picture. It's him and his wife on their wedding day. I recognized her instantly. I thought about telling him. The problem is they have kids together and it would cause me a lot of trouble if it came out I was the one who had told him. What's your stance on nudity generally? I'm no prude, I'm totally cool with nudity in TV and movies, and I've even been to nude beaches and music festivals where clothing is optional. But when it comes to nudity in my personal life, I have some strong opinions. See, I used to date this guy who was really into nudism. At first, I was intrigued. He talked about the freedom and liberation that came with shedding all your clothes and being exposed. It sounded kinda hot, to be honest. But then we started spending more time at the nudist colony he belonged to and it was far from the sexy, carefree utopia I had imagined. The people there weren't conventionally attractive. There were saggy boobs and flabby butts and hairy everything. But I respect them for feeling comfortable and confident in their own skin. Then there were the hygiene issues. I've never seen so many unwashed genitals in my life. And the communal showers? Forget about it. I felt like I needed a hazmat suit just to go in there. But the worst part was the creep factor. There were a lot of older, single men there who seemed a little too interested in me and my body. I caught a few of them leering at me, and one guy even made a comment about how he wished he was my towel. I know that not everybody who's into nudism is a pervert or a creep, but my experience definitely left a bad taste in my mouth. I'm all for people doing what makes them happy, but I think I'll stick to keeping my clothes on in public from now on. But then I met this other guy who was also into nudism and he made it look so fun and liberating. He made me want to give it another try. So I did, and let me tell you, it was a totally different experience. I felt so free and uninhibited. I even forgot I was naked for a few moments. It was the most liberating experience of my life and I'm so glad I gave it another chance. My girlfriend lied about being autistic and I'm so ashamed. I've been recently diagnosed with autism at 28. I was surprised at first, but now I'm glad I have the answers to all my questions growing up on why I was so different. But I've also been struggling with a lot of shame, and it's hard for me to tell people that I'm on the spectrum. My girlfriend knows I'm autistic and she's completely unbothered by the fact and always adjusts to my own needs. We were out at dinner last week, seated in a more open area. The lights bothered me first, then the noise picked up and it felt like the room was closing in. I started to panic and excused myself before rushing to the bathroom. When I came out, my girlfriend was waiting for me in front of the men's bathroom. She told me that she was able to switch our table to a more quiet corner and they even dimmed the lights in our section. I was relieved that I didn't mess up the night and was grateful that she even thought to switch tables instead of suggesting to leave. Later that night she told me that she was also on the spectrum and that she switched tables out of her own discomfort as well. I was ashamed that I didn't realize she was also on the spectrum and guilty because she's had to carry that for the months we've been dating. I don't know why she didn't tell me earlier, but I have a feeling that maybe she's ashamed like me. I've decided to go to therapy to get myself out of this self-wallowing pity party so I can be more confident for my girlfriend.
I thought my boyfriend was going to propose on our anniversary trip, but it didn't happen, and now I feel sad and gross. I'm going to say upfront that I don't deal with disappointment easily. Never have. Not since I was little. It's the one emotion that just completely floods out rational thought and control from my mind. I always end up crying no matter how hard I try to fight it. That being said, this weekend was my 27 female, 4-year anniversary with my boyfriend, 27 male. We live together, both have well-paying jobs, and are very open about our future together. We talk about marriage a lot. This isn't something we're weird about, and he's even told me he's had a ring picked out for over a year. We also travel quite a bit, but I am usually the planner, so when he came to me a few months ago and told me he had booked us a trip to upstate New York for our anniversary, I was genuinely surprised. I didn't want to get ahead of myself, but the timing felt right, and I thought, hey, maybe it's time. Maybe we're going to actually get engaged. I even had a few friends tell me unprompted they thought he was going to propose when I told them what my weekend plans were. To add on to it, he also told me his family would be flying across country to visit us the weekend after we got back. It all felt a little too perfect, and I was basically convinced this was going to happen. He had even made a comment about needing to pay down his credit card, implying he made a large purchase. I know I was probably fully into confirmation bias at this point, but I couldn't help myself. So the weekend comes and he's being extra nice to me, holding my hand everywhere, overly complimenting me, everything. Today he had this hike mapped out to this scenic overlook and everything. I was ready. Ready for absolutely nothing apparently, because nothing happened. We had this whole gorgeous lookout to ourselves. Stayed a whole 5 minutes, then left. I was pretty quiet on the way back, but I thought, hey, maybe he's trying to throw me off the trail or something. We go out to grab lunch and I ask him if he had anything else planned for the weekend, and he says nope, that was the only thing I had planned today unless you want to do anything. I finally tell him I feel pretty silly because it's our last day and I thought he was going to propose. He laughed and said he thought I might think that, and even said his mom had told him she thought that's what was going on, and he told her no, that definitely isn't happening. I don't think he meant it to come off as mean, but in that moment I all of a sudden felt really stupid. Like I had come across as desperate or needy for the first time in our relationship. I had never before pressured or made any implication I was expecting a proposal on a timeline, and now I felt really stupid and small for even mentioning it. He tried to move the conversation along, and as he was talking, another group of people our age sat at the table next to us and started discussing how one of the couples just got engaged. He gave me a yikes face, thinking I would find the situation funny, but I couldn't help it. I just started silently crying right there in the restaurant. It was like the emotional high to low caught up with me all at once, and I couldn't help it. I hate being emotionally demonstrative, especially in public, so we quickly left and went back to the hotel. When we got back, I just started sobbing. Big chest, hyperventilating sobs. I felt like I had broken something I couldn't fix. That by telling him I was expecting a proposal, I now erased the possibility of a genuine organic one. I had ruined that for myself. He was very apologetic for not understanding the optics of the situation and said he would have if he had a ring. And he felt dumb looking back on how he set things up to look one way. I cleaned myself up and told him I was more upset and embarrassed with myself. I never wanted to be the type of person that forces someone into an engagement. I put in a brave face and tried to be upbeat the rest of the day, but as the day wore on, that hole of disappointment kept opening in my chest. I felt gross and small and found it difficult to think about anything else. I could barely talk to or look at him because I felt I ruined this weekend he planned by making something out of nothing. I just went back and quietly laid down in the hotel room. I just want to sink into myself right now. It's not even like I can get time alone to just be sad because we live together. I don't really have anyone to talk to about this, so I thought I'd put it here. Feels really inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, but just wanted to get it off my chest.
What's the biggest culture shock you ever experienced? When I was a kid, one of my mother's friends was a woman from a very tough background who had left her husband because he used to hit her and her children. She had 3 kids and was living in a 2-bedroom council flat in a tough part of Glasgow. My mom met her because they were both doing part-time university degrees as mature students. She was studying to get a teaching qualification. I became friends with one of this woman's kids when I was about 6 or 7. I'd go over to his house for the night sometimes, and we'd generally wander around the local neighborhood just doing what kids do. He always carried a rucksack and was always on the lookout for empty glass soda/alcohol bottles. If he saw one, he'd grab it and stick it in the rucksack. After a while I started bringing a rucksack along when I visited so we could double up on glass bottle carrying capacity. The reason he did this was that, in Glasgow back then, a sort of proto-recycling scheme meant that every one of those bottles was redeemable for 5p at any shop that sold them. They'd collect them, give out 5p per bottle, send them off to be recycled, and be reimbursed for their time by the local government. We'd collect a bunch of these then. When we went back to the flat in the afternoon, my friend would proudly hand over a few quid in coins to his mother. He used to do this constantly and it meant, this being the 1980s, a decent little earner to help pay for a bit of the household expenses and so on. I came from a family with a detached house in the suburbs that had 2 cars, 2 parents, 2 nice holidays a year, and no real worries when it came to money. Not rich, just lucky to be standard middle class. Meanwhile, this woman was raising 3 children by herself while studying to become a teacher, in a tiny little damp flat in a bad part of town. She never asked her son to do what he did, he just took it upon himself aged 7 or whatever to go out and do it. People who quit a job in the heat of the moment, what SHT show did you leave them to handle? Let me tell you of my last day of Walmart. It's Monday morning, my day off, when I receive a call from my manager, let's call her Douche Canoe. Douche Canoe asks me to come into work because of 2 call-offs. Thinking that I did not have anything else planned, and could use the overtime, I agreed. I informed her over the phone it would take me an hour to get home, dress, and drive to work. All I heard was an annoyed fine, just get here. 1 hour later I arrived at work. Just as I was getting to the deli, where I work, my manager, who was behind the counter by herself, starts yelling at me for being late. In front of not 1, not 2, but a line of customers. I attempt to remind her of our conversation, but she cuts me off, tosses me her apron, and storms out of the deli. I am forced to shrug it off, apologize to the customers, and get to work. Later, I have a customer walk to the deli and ask about our rotisserie chicken, something not uncommon. I explain it will be over an hour before they are ready, and suggest driving 5 minutes north to the other Walmart. He nods, thanks me, and walks away towards the front. I thought nothing of it, and continued to cook popcorn chicken. 5 minutes later, the same customer comes back with none other than Douche Canoe, who is asking me about the rotisserie chicken. I, once again, attempt to explain how long the chicken is left to cook, and the suggestion I made. No sooner than when I finish speaking she berates me for being lazy, and telling a customer to go elsewhere. I ask what else is there I could do, as I couldn't make the oven cook faster. Her next words stick to this day, I want you to do your damn job, or you can kiss it goodbye. A moment of pause from everyone. Zoe and May have been listening in the entire time, as well as the customers they were helping. I ponder, then smile. Okay. I apologize to Zoe and May, wish them the best of luck, and walk out of the deli towards my manager. I stop in front of her, take off my apron, kiss it, say goodbye, and walk out of the store. I still have my name badge and hat to this day. My niece has a vacuum as a mouth and I got yelled at for asking about it. Let me just say this went on for about 3 years. It's an old problem, but I always felt bad afterward, so I need unbiased opinions. My 26F, niece, 16F, and I have a good relationship. Our relationship is more like sisters because we were close in age. She was always around, and I never tried to be bossy to her like an aunt should, so she never respected me as an adult when it was time for serious matters. In 2018, I had to move in with my grandma to take care of her after my uncle, her brother, died so suddenly. At the time, she wasn't in really bad shape. My family just didn't want her to be alone. That was only supposed to be until she moved to be around the whole family. She never wanted to, so I stayed with her up until she died in December 2022. A few months after I moved in, my sister got arrested and sent to jail, so my niece also moved in. My niece is a picky eater. Or not picky, more has terrible eating habits. She only likes to eat McDonald's every day. Coffee and anything sweet she can get her hands on. She's skinny. Fast forward to when I applied to get food stamps to help out with buying food. I got approved for just myself, but I always brought food for my niece and grandma. More than I got myself because I only eat when I'm in the mood for something. Example, I go to the grocery store and get corn dogs because I know I'll be in the mood for them eventually. I don't necessarily eat whenever I'm hungry. So I did the same thing with ice cream, juice, other types of food. I know what my niece likes, and most of the time, she goes with me to the grocery stores to pick out the stuff herself. She'd pick out ice cream, coffee, little snacks. I then would buy me my own ice cream. I only enjoy cookies and cream. She likes all kinds. I kid you not. My niece would literally finish her box of ice cream in one day. The same day we brought it home. Every time. She'd eat them when we're sleeping, then a few days later, I'd go get an ice cream because I'm in the mood for it. Only to discover it has already been opened, and I have 1 or 2 left if she's feeling nice enough to leave me some. It got to the point where I stopped buying myself ice cream. I threatened to stop buying her ice cream and snacks if she's going to continue to eat mine without asking. Then my grandma would start to get on me about how I can't say I won't buy her anything, and if it's that serious, she can pay for my niece's snacks herself. I continued to buy her own stuff. When she'd finish her juice, she'd open mine. When she went through all her snacks, she'd eat mine. This went on for as long as we lived with my grandma. All my complaints were ignored. It got to the point where I started taking stuff to my room, and I hate doing that. It became a routine. I go grocery shopping. Everyone gets their own little snacks and drinks, and we all share the main foods. My niece would finish hers and shimmy down to mine or my grandma's because she loved sweet stuff, too. Mainly like cakes, donuts. She got those like once a month, and my niece would eat all of the donuts, and my grandma got on her about that a few times, but like I said, everything would be ignored. I go and discover my stuff missing and go into her room and ask her about the missing food. It's so tiring having to repeat yourself all the time, so I'll admit I have gotten frustrated a few times and raised my voice at her. Then my grandma would chime in. Sometimes on my side but mostly on my niece's, and I always felt bad afterward even though I felt I had the right to be upset that I couldn't even eat the snacks I bought for myself in peace. I would question if I was the asshole, but it seems kind of obvious, so instead, I'll ask, should I still look back and feel bad for all the times I got annoyed by the situation?